The microphone was not working. We're back on. It's 7/2/2026. This is the IPS Deprogram. One of the topics I'm raising the question was Owen Shoyer replaced? Now, this is kind of a follow up to the idea that Alex Jones has been replaced. I don't believe Alex Jones has been replaced. I think he lost some weight. I think he grew a beard after 20 years of this clean shaven face. And other than that, his mannerisms and everything else match. If anything, he's using a beauty filter, if anything. But I don't think there's sufficient evidence to say that he's been replaced or any explanation as for why. I don't understand what the why would be. But anyway, this has been a back and forth because I used to suggest that he was this comedian, Bill Hicks. The main problem with that is Bill Hicks is like 10 years older, and Alex Jones is like, what, 55 or something? Unless he looks more 65, maybe it's plausible, but I kind of dropped that thing because there's a lot of narrative support for it, especially if you look into Kevin Booth and the Waco thing. So you can find all this plausibility. I mean, these plausible evidence. To me, it looks like it's a great case for a death faker, but it comes down to opinion. We're never going to have anything definitive. I just think it's really Jones's fault for even really starting that rumor and spreading it. But anyway, they've made a joke out of the whole concept of basically deep faking, old school style. Before it was done digitally, they used hyper realistic masks, the kind of which were declassified in 2015, widely discussed by Jonah Mendez, who was a director of disguise for the CIA for 27 years. And the idea was that you could be in a room full of Saddam Husseins and not know which one is the real one. And there wouldn't have to be a real one. I mean, I've considered the idea before that Donald Trump is just a costume. And you don't know how many actors could be playing anybody. It's not outside the realm of fakeability. The problem is you can't really prove these things, but you can prove the technology exists. But you have to include fakeability in your assessments. But the whole field of discourse around this concept of deepfakes, these hyper realistic mask deepfakes, the topic's been saturated by a bunch of misinformation agents like Fittest Flat Earther, for example, who make these ridiculous assertions. And I think it's designed to actually cover up the actual tech. Sort of like UFO stories were made to cover up advanced flight tech. So you can see these are obviously disinformation agents. I'm specifically saying Fittest Flat Earther because he'll make these unserious claims, and yet he gets boosted all over X. He's the one who says that Oprah Winfrey is playing Candace Owens. Like, I don't know how you make sense of that. And why would you assert something that you can't back up? And if you could back that up, you would be on the cover of TMZ for breaking this huge story, and none of them really do. And there's no accountability for their lying, and the system seems to reward engagement bait and clickbait over anything of substance or anything with truth in it. So that aside, the idea that Alex Jones has been replaced isn't impossible. I personally don't believe it. I think it's more likely that he's Bill Hicks than that he's Alex Jones and he got replaced. We only talk about him because of his position and relevance to the media ecosystem we discuss, which is divided into main and alt, and he's propped up. And when these individuals are being censored, it's always artificial censorship, and it's just a way to monetize their own sites. Censorship doesn't matter, it means you're getting noticed. We are the unacknowledged, and our vantage point will never be acknowledged. It can't be acknowledged because their operatives are not at the security clearance to where they're even aware that what we're talking about is real. I mean, Candace Owens knows. Erica Kirk knows. Charlie Kirk knows. I'm not going to say he knew. No, he knows. Whoever that was playing that character. And I'm seeing Trutherville on Twitter exploding with theories about, oh, the microphone blew up and it sent a little charge through his neck, and this guy pushed the button and activated it. They have this elaborate story that then they took his body and they covered the evidence. And it's always this thing about how Erica Kirk was behind it, Frank Turek was behind it. So they've created these alternate conspiracy theories for Charlie Kirk's death and who did it and why. It's always a whodunit. But none of them can confront the idea that Charlie Kirk is not dead. The closest they can get is they toy with the idea that he had to fake his death to get away from Erica, which is sort of believable. I mean, yeah, it could be a witness protection thing, but if you're going to go into witness protection, why would you stage an elaborate exit like that where a number of things could go wrong and screw it up, something that would require letting a lot of people in on it? You don't go into witness protection with the assistance of 500 crisis actors and the whole group of people around you being in the know to some level. You just compromise the whole mission. It'd be more likely that he would have just had a heart attack and then he just disappears. So that's a ridiculous notion. And that's what they lean on when they say maybe it was a squib, maybe he faked his death. It's like, well, then why did he do it publicly? That's just ridiculous. The fact of it is, what they won't acknowledge is that Charlie Kirk isn't dead, and Erica Kirk isn't the Erica Kirk that people are deranged about. She's not the villainess. She's not a honeypot, a betrayer, an agent of the deep state or Mossad. No, that's an engineered persona that you're basically led to. There was a rabbit trail that was paved decades ago, and all these conspiracy theorists are going down that rabbit trail. The whole second shooter thing, the template from JFK on. And they're still looking for the second shooter. And ultimately, it's always going to point to the same source, but they're following a blueprint. And the reason why this is so heavily shilled, why there's so many bots promoting this stuff, boosting Candace Owens, is that this is part of the paradigm that they're manufacturing, and they need this to exist. They need to have the controlled, government-created conspiracy counterculture, and it's a remake of what they did post-JFK. So they're not going to let this go. That's why they keep on arriving at new iterations of how he might have died. And they're like, oh, look, Israel used exploding mics or exploding pagers. So they create these rabbit holes. It's engineered this way, and it's all to prevent you from questioning the existence of these characters as just, as they're presented. They want you to believe that Charlie Kirk was a Christian conservative who got $1 billion backing at 18, skipped college, and went into politics. And then he met Miss Arizona, and she was secretly a baddie, but she presented herself as a trad wife, and she betrayed him. And ultimately it was because he was going to oppose Israel's war with Iran or something. So they have this elaborate story that they go into, and it's like, no, that's all fake. You're looking at basically a couple of actors who are playing a script, and you can kind of determine who was in on it based on their proximity to these two. Candace Owens is 100% outside the circle of plausible deniability. Like she's definitely part of the script between Erica, Charlie, TPUSA. They're all in on the same script. This would include everyone who was in the tent with Charlie, who carried his squibbed body to the vehicle. They're all in on the hoax. And what does it say about the vice president, the president, about TPUSA? The whole thing is a manufactured, or basically, I'd say astroturfed and maybe mostly ghost organizations. But yeah, it's fake youth Republican political groups. Let me go through your comments and see who's here. So what I'm pointing out here is that Charlie Kirk never existed. Erica Kirk doesn't exist. She's an actress. You're seeing a role. And this role, this villain with the hidden dark side, femme fatale, Jezebel, all these ways she's been characterized perfectly reflect her characters or her corresponding characters in predictive programming, from Snake Eyes to Heads of State. This is a pre-manufactured character. And I pointed this out how when I saw the theater full of people cheering the death of Homelander, I knew that they were perceiving this as an effigy of Trump. That's an expression of their Trump derangement. And that's why I was the only one still in my seat not screaming when the crowbar went into his head. It's because I knew that this was basically a proxy. This is a way for them to, in effigy, kill Trump. And I saw all these people responding as one. I saw the mob psychology, and I realized Trump derangement syndrome isn't organic. It's the result of a lifetime of being presented with this Biff Tannen archetype, this bully, and different iterations of him. They even designed King Koopa, the bad guy in the Super Mario's universe, off of Trump in the Super Mario's where they actually melt the Twin Towers. So what I'm saying here is that what I saw was the result of just programming. And they had this programmed response. And so look at the programmed response to Erica Kirk. Look at the level of popularity she's achieved. Nobody knew who she was on September 9th. And then the next day, now she becomes this focus. And even before we saw it unfold, I said in The Tempest, which came out the day he was shot and mirrors the whole scene, the widow takes over and goes to the same. And I talked about this before she went through these steps. So we're seeing her living a role. It's basically a movie. And it's interesting, too, how one side sees her as a villain and the other side sees her as a victim. Like the mainstream pro-Israel Republicans are very aggressive in their defense of the widow. I mean, Frank Turek has alluded to biblical verses that would suggest that Candace Owens should be killed. You had other, right-wing people basically screeching about those who are bashing the widow. But then the other side, the more red pill, and red pill conspiracy theorists are basically aligned with the woke right. They're the anti-Israel branch, and they see her as, well, she's Mossad. She's not a victim. She took Charlie in, and he was the face of the youth Christian Republicans, and they had to take him out because he was too powerful, and he wasn't pro-Israel. So anyway, they live in this fictional universe. They take these people as real. They respond to them as they're conditioned to respond. And I'm suggesting that the programming around Erica has characterized her as a villain. And as long as you think she's a villain, you're not talking about her as being fake. As long as you think Charlie's a martyr and a real Christian, you're not focusing on the fact that he was fake. And just the fact that he did this, that he participated in a psychological warfare operation that involved a bloody neck wound, for everybody to see up close. I mean, nobody saw the JFK assassination. It took 12 years for that video to get out. But here we are looking at Charlie's neck spurting blood on TV. He took part in that operation, which is effectively terrorism. It's telling one side of the sheep pen, hey, this group's so crazy they'll shoot you. And it basically terrorizes the believers, radicalizes people, does a lot of damage to society, if you ask me. Well, that's how they structure this thing. That's not something a true Christian would do. So I think it's important to get the idea through your head that these people are fake. And the truthers can't figure that out. So they're like, we got to figure out, we got to avenge Charlie. You want to avenge a crisis actor? Someone with two faces who basically ripped you off, conned you, and probably had a good time doing it, laughing at this little Hollywood special effect and people overreacting to it. Seeing how it causes society to, go into spasms. It's really insane. Do you remember, like, the right wing was like, we got to censor anybody who says the Charlie Kirk thing was funny or that we're glad he's dead. Like, they were just out there trying to get people fired from their jobs for approving of Charlie's death. And I thought it was somewhat shocking, not surprising, that you have a huge section of the population who are in favor of assassinations. But it doesn't surprise me because I have a lot of lefties around me, and I often hear opinions that are basically, in approval of an Oswald. Like a lot of them express remorse that Thomas Crooks missed. And I don't tell these people, oh, it was fake. I don't even bother. I don't go there. But they think it's real. And thinking it's real, they're cheering on the blood. Like, bring on the blood. It's really psychopathic. I'm not really in that mindset with them. It kind of reminds me of watching people who really get into sports and you don't like the sport. I still think they should have branded Thomas Crooks as a flat earther because they're trying to demonize every group of people who think in divergent ways. And I thought they could have said, yeah, he was a flat earther and he didn't calculate for the rotation of the earth. And that's what saved Trump. He actually moved out of the path of the bullet. Because at that distance, that is a plausible explanation if you believe that snipers have to account for the rotation of the earth. I think wind is a bigger factor. And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I remember firing what is it, M60s, and then 50 cal, the seated ones, and you got on the tripods. And I don't remember being advised about the Earth's spin, but I do remember discussing wind. Joined by John Francis, Flatlander, Frankmer33, X322. Says, good afternoon. Yeah, I was going to be live late last night, but I had so much going on. I had to complete a lot of side quests. I spent too much time trying to figure out Owen Shoyer, like what happened. Because he comes out and he's like lecturing MAGA. And it was just the fact that he's in the bright sun and he's radically changed his appearance. Shaving your beard is dramatic if your brand is a big beard. Shaving it is a massive change. But then he also had this hair dye job. And I'm not here to criticize anybody's wardrobe or fashion. I'm just saying it was a dramatic change, like a brand change. And there are people saying, oh, it looks like he's been replaced by Kathy Griffin, or Aunt Gladys from Weapons, or Heath Ledger Joker, Buffalo Bill, Beetlejuice. Like, people are just tearing him up. And he comes out and he doesn't care. Which is good, because I think the previous incarnation of Owen Shoyer was Timu Alex Jones. And Alex Jones, as a role model to build his persona, it's just like he's too unique. He's too idiosyncratic. So trying to imitate that just comes off as being an imitator, someone who mimics, not someone who, has their own style. So it seems like maybe he is branching off into his own style, but his opinions are still mediocre, uninformed, mainstream. It's like red pill light. That's what it is. It's not like he can discuss things off-world stage in any meaningful way. He can't call out the fact that Charlie Kirk is alive and not under witness protection, but that Charlie Kirk never existed because he's just an actor. Good polemicist, but that doesn't mean he really believed anything he said. All right, let's see. Duet Celeste, Ted Stryker. Mike Smith says, Alex Jones is a character created by Time Warner Cable as testified in court, I believe. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. A character. Now, they could take all of the content from InfoWars for 20, 30 years or whatever, feed it into an AI, and replace them right now with an AI agent. And soon these things will be autonomous. I mean, they'll be doing things like, Anthony Robbins was talking about his AI agent ordering body parts for itself. Thirst 13. Ollie Bongo Magic says, Bill Hicks was one of the top U.S. stand-ups in Europe, UK, big in Canada, and beginning to get bigger crowds in the U.S. To switch to being Alex Jones on local cable conspiracy show seems dubious. Yeah, that's kind of interesting to think about. But if you look at the storyline and the Kevin Booth connection, there is substance to it. And partly you can blame Kevin Booth for seemingly alluding to this being a joke, being a prank. And maybe you're missing something. Maybe he's offered a role. It's like, hey, look, as a comedian, you do this. As a talk show host, you get to participate in a bigger maybe. Maybe it's just more money. And I would say it's more interesting because he's still a comedian. You can't say Alex Jones isn't funny. If you look at his commercials, like he still has that, but I don't think he's Bill Hicks. I don't think they look alike. I mean, I've seen some comparisons. I don't know. There's too many differences. The height is a big one. But the narrative supports it. That's why it's so intriguing. We're not just saying this person looks like this person. Like, for example, Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison, fake dying at 27, becoming Rush Limbaugh. Well, the fake death thing is not hard to say because, there's a lot of weird things about his death, his alleged death. I don't even know if they had an open casket. But there are some things that sort of correlate, like the wives look the same, the golden microphone. And then he did talk about going into the real world and putting on a suit and tie. Other than that, I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, that's right. Rushbo Jimbo. And I did hear Rush Limbaugh on this Rush to Excellent tour backstage singing. And I was like, okay, you can sing. And then you can actually hear him singing a Jim Morrison song. What is it, The End? I'd like to ask him, but conveniently he died just before January 6th. Well, right after, I think. He didn't have to answer for any of that. I would have been curious on his takes, but anybody care to guess how long he was on the air with EIB? Pretty sure he had, what, 33 years in radio or something? All right, let's continue. Cub star Erica Creech and Suzette Ann. Timu Alex Jones. Nicholas Pitt says his nose is different. Biden's ears changed. Okay, now Biden's another one. Biden's another one that I have to talk about because if you just put Biden, Vice President Biden, and President Biden, there's a significant change, which they are saying it's basically a makeover for the presidency, which you would expect. But I think the skull is significantly smaller. And when I compared him to Beau Biden, who supposedly died, I'm like, he looks like he's got Beau Biden's skull. So I entertained the idea that Beau Biden was in fact like this, the stand-in for Joe Biden, and well, who knows what happened to him. I figured they just put him out to pasture. Plain Dakota says we are not Charlie Kirk. Yeah, and I'm not that girl on the subway either. Remember Matt Hyde? These a lot of these comedians are provocateurs. They're feds. Matt Hyde comes out and he's like, "You are Charlie Kirk, and your mom or your sister or your girlfriend or that girl on the subway that got killed." I'm like, okay, that's a little dramatic, and I don't know if it's real. I'm not going to bypass my reason here and get all emotional about it. But when he said "you," who was he talking to? He was talking to far right, white identitarian, groypers, America First. And so he was talking to a very specific subgroup. Then Alex Jones puts it on blast. And that's why I didn't memorize her name. I'm not bad with names. I don't know the name of the girl that got killed on the subway because somebody told me that I need to say her name. I'm like, no. I'm not going to kowtow to the mob. But that's how you know somebody's an agent. When they have this big audience and they're conveniently there to hype up every psyop. And I believe in guilt by association. We talked about this recently because Erica Kirk was apparently best friends with one of the victims of the Batman shooting in Aurora, Colorado in 2012. In July of 2012, Aurora, Colorado, they had the opening night for the Batman movie. And during the trailer of Gangsters with Sean Penn, where the gangsters come to the movie screen and shoot everybody, James Holmes comes in and he shoots everybody and she dies. Well, previously, she survived a mass shooting in Toronto. So she survives one, dies at this one. That crisis actress was best friends with Erica Kirk. And in my view, guilt by association works on the world stage. There are no coincidences on the world stage. We're talking about the constructs, the fictional universe that's superimposed over reality. That kind of correlation or connection, rather, that direct connection is just too much. You can't consider Erica Kirk to be real. And yet I see the conspiracy theorists are running with this material because Candace Owens points it out. And what they're saying is that, oh, it's because everybody around Erica who crosses her dies. I mean, it's just, they can't really make sense of it, so they have to invent conspiracy theories. That's why I call it MSM plus. The mainstream universe is singular, MSM. It's a closed system. There's nothing outside of it that they entertain. They don't acknowledge anything outside of it. But within it, you have the subset of conspiracy theories, and it's MSM plus because it adds on to the basic premise they established. The essential reality of Erica Kirk has been established, but then they add on their own takes. All right, let's see here. Nate Watley says, no matter who Alex Jones is, he was destined to become the face of InfoWars. Yeah, I would say that he's sort of a fixture. Like, I call it Alex Jonestown. I don't know if anybody's still drinking the Kool-Aid. I kind of felt bad for him, honestly, when he talked about how mean Owen Shoyer was. Like, Owen Shoyer, I mean, I don't like to diagnose people from a distance, but their fallout was ugly. I'm just gonna say maybe there's a personality disorder. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just jealous. I don't know what. But their fallout was ugly. Could have been staged, but if it was staged, it wasn't a career launcher for Owen Shoyer. It made him look petty. And then it's just kind of ironic because he was talking about how he's starting his new channel. He called it Year of the Mog, uh, talking about he was the year he's looks maxing. So my good for him, he's looks maxing, whatever the hell that is. Like I think looks maxing is a psyop. But anyway, he's doing it, and then he shows up yesterday looking uh, like probably I'd say Heath Ledger. Joker is probably the closest we have to him. And to a lot of people, it's just kind of a shock to see this dramatic shift. But I'll put some images up later if anybody cares. I actually don't. All right, Erica Creech says Owen's causing cognitive dissonance now with his appearance. It is what they do. Well, yeah, that's why I brought it up ironically as a title. That he's been replaced. Like, no, he hasn't been replaced. Another thing that often gets people is focal length. You got to think about the camera that was used. The selfie camera, something else. The selfie view is going to be very different from a webcam view. And you see these celebrities and they use a different camera, and everyone's like, oh, like Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx has been cloned. And do you remember how that rolled out? Rumors were that Jamie Foxx had died and then been resuscitated on some movie set. And then there were rumors because of a video of him where he was saying he was okay. There was a rumor that he had been replaced because he looked different because it was a focal length issue. But they said he's been cloned. And then he addressed the rumors that he hasn't been cloned. And then, like the next month, this movie comes out. They cloned Tyrone. And guess who's in it? Jamie Foxx. I was like, that's got to be some brilliant promotion. And if you haven't seen They Cloned Tyrone, it's a good mix of Truman Show, Josie and the Pussycats, and Dark City, with a lot of nods to Kubrick. It's a very well thought out film. And it's about mind control. It's about cloning also. Okay, going through some comments. Erica says it's great Trump was ready to jump into the Marvel universe where Bruce Wayne exists. These are world stagers. Yeah, I think they live in this is kind of interesting too. 'Cause I think they live in what you'd consider to be a fictional universe. I mean, we all live on our subjective universes, our own social networks, our own families, our own worldviews, and we have our internalized concept. But these actors on the world stage, they're all participating in this. What I call it the world stage because it's just the place where all the scripts are real. They're not real outside of it. Well, not objectively, but because we process it as real, it becomes real. And you look at history, and it's a mix of the stuff they fed us that was fake and then what we actually experienced. But Donald Trump met Christian Bale in Trump Tower because they were filming Batman Dark Knight Rises there. So Dark Knight obviously is a reference we talked about because that's what Citizen Vigilante was originally called. But anyway, there's Christian Bale, who played Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. And we've been talking about the Bateman-Batman connection, and I have more on that. But he's hanging out at Trump Tower as Bruce Wayne. Donald Trump meets him and talks to him as though he's Bruce Wayne. And that always just kind of struck me as strange. But this also connects because Patrick Bateman, it turns out, in the book American Psycho, idolizes Donald Trump. There's like a lot of Trump references. And I've been talking about how both Patrick Bateman and Batman have been used as these ideal man archetypes for the far right. And how it's significant, therefore, that Citizen Vigilante has a lot of connections to both Batman and to Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, which we've talked about. We talked about that last week. I think there's something else I wanted to bring up. Oh, yeah. So we had compared this movie to Sound of Freedom, which is starring Jim Caviezel. And Jim Caviezel is, I spelled a Q because he was pushing QAnon. And his movie Sound of Freedom was about saving the children, which no QAnoners have ever done. They've never saved children. In fact, a lot of them have gone to prison for doing bad things. But anyway, Jim Caviezel played, when he was 33, he played Jesus in Mel Gibson's film Resurrection of the Christ. Mel Gibson is another meta-scripter. Look at the opening scene of The Patriot, where he's making a rocking chair. It weighs 9 pounds, 11 ounces, and when he sits on it, everybody looks at him scared. And it focuses on the two legs in the back, and then it collapses. And then the enemy invades, and he has to go to war. Like, there's 9/11 predictive programming in Patriot, so he's already one of the meta-scripters. So he directs Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel. Well, Jim Caviezel was also the Count of Monte Cristo. And that is like the proto Batman. That is the original Batman. The guy with a lot of money, dual identity, wears a mask, fights the criminals, helps the innocent, driven by vengeance, more or less. But it's interesting that Jim Caviezel and this actor Armie Hammer have both been, stars of movies targeting the same demographic. And both of them have an overlap with the same archetype, this ideal man that's been presented to the right, this person with this, this other side, the vigilante side. Anyway, we will get more into that. And I find it very intriguing anyway, the whole Batman-Bateman connection. Because it says, okay, well, the writer of American Psycho would therefore rightly be considered a metascriptor. And especially with the characterization of Patrick Bateman as worshiping Trump. And I remember reading, I actually had the audiobook of one of his previous novels. It was in the subsequent one, it was called Glamorama. And I put it down the first time because it was just too hard to follow. Like, it's too hard for me to believe that this protagonist is unable to recognize when he's in his role as a character, as an actor, and when he's living his real life. And it gets a little confusing. I'm going to read it again. I'm reading it now because it might be insightful here. Because we're talking about the idea that Trump is a world stager and that it's funny that he would have responded to Bruce Wayne. And I think we get some insights here and there. I was looking at this, at the RNC, when he blew a kiss at Hulk Hogan, I took that as basically a signal between two members of the WWE Hall of Fame. Basically, Hulk Hogan was saying, my head was bloody at Hulkamania. I look down and see Trump. And then he's like, and now I'm looking up at Trump and his head is bloody. Well, how would you compare Hulkamania to getting shot in the head? Well, the common denominator is the WWE Hall of Fame membership, and both of these are individuals who therefore know about blading, which is what it looks like Trump did. He even flinched when he put his hand to his ear. And you know who also said that Donald Trump bladed himself? Jesse Ventura. All right, let's continue here. Plain Dakota says 2008 to 2012 AJ was goof times. Do you mean good times or goof times? Because during the Obama years, it was all about martial law. They're going to lock you up. And they've really changed. JT33 says the fittest flat earther is Jay Leno. His chin gives it away. See, that's more likely because somebody said that Timothy McVeigh is playing the role of the fittest flat earther. But no, he's Special Agent Weissapol at the FBI. He's probably retired by now. The actor, the FBI agent who played Timothy McVeigh has been identified. So I was like, well, then who is he? Now, I haven't seen Jay Leno in a bit, but I think you might be right. Jay Leno is playing the role of the fittest flat earther. Unmitigated says, I'd like to say that Shoyer and Jones are both stunning and brave. They're both shills, but I did sense there was some authentic competition between them. So let me show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here, just so you get an idea. Just prepare yourself. When did Owen Shoyer become the Joker? You see, this is like Heath Ledger Joker. You can see why people say Beetlejuice, Kathy Griffin, or Buffalo Bill. And I'm not being hypercritical, but when he said he was going to mog everybody this year, it was around that time that he started taking his shirt off on video and, basically doing what Alex Jones used to do. So I took it to be like a shtick, derivative of somebody else. It wasn't original. And nobody wants to see Alex Jones with his shirt off. doing push-ups with Russell Brand on his back. Cubstar says when Kelly Osbourne was replaced by Skeletor, everybody assumed it was Ozzy Ozempic. Um, I I think I know what you're talking about, but maybe I don't know. I had to look at that. And it's like, for example, The Rock. Did The Rock really lose 60 pounds for a role? You know, they praised him. I haven't even watched his movie. Like, oh, it's such a big deal that he lost all that weight for the role. And I'm looking at The Rock when he was a wrestler, and I look at him now as a movie star, or actually before he lost the 60, and he's much larger post WWE. And I remember thinking, there's no way that's sustainable. The amount of drugs you got to take to maintain that stature. And at some point, he's going to look like one of these, these pregnant beasts. When years and years of abusing these, anabolics or whatever, it's just like he's going to have that human growth hormone gut, and he's gonna eventually, it's going to happen. It's not healthy, and he's not going to enjoy his a long life if he continues in that kind of lifestyle. So I thought, well, maybe after WWE, he put on the rubber suit. Like maybe he didn't have to, go all out anymore. And for the movies, he's wearing a muscle suit. And at the same time we were talking about this, Glenn Reynolds was starring in some movie about a football player, and he was on the cover of GQ wearing a muscle suit, 100%, a 100% believable muscle suit. And I was like, did he get that from The Rock's closet? Because I'm sure they have like a set of them, like one for each day of the week. So if Glenn Reynolds can convincingly wear the body of a football player, like an NFL level football player, then why couldn't The Rock have a superhero body? And why wouldn't they do that? And it's healthy. So The Rock could have been the rubber this whole time, and he could have just basically been like a human coat rack, like a beanpole, like skinny, and then you wouldn't know. And I think that's far more likely than that he was this impossible to maintain size for this many years. I could be wrong, but something is off. It's just too dramatic of a shift. All right, let's continue here. We're talking about Owen Shoyer. Now, he's not a relevant figure in any meaningful way, but it is worth pointing out how controlled these people are. Because, with Alex Jones, you think, oh, he's cutting edge, the fringe, he's like close to power, 1 degree separated from Trump. You have all these ideas about these people, but everything he says is built upon the mainstream media's when we're talking about staged events or major events, the mainstream media's what I call the meta script. This is the simulations, the fake events. He responds to those as though they're objectively real, and then adds a spin, a conspiratorial spin. That's a subplot. And that's why I say conspiracy theorizing is actually flawed at this point. From within their closed system, conspiracy theories aren't going to get you out of that system because they're all built upon the assumption that what they're being presented is real. We're not doing conspiracy theories here. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and a lot of conspiracy theorists don't like me because I've discredited some of their favorites. Like, for example, Mandela effect. Nobody's a Mandela effector anymore. Simulation theory. We've kind of put an end to that as anything other than an old, dusty, expired, failed thought experiment that doesn't even qualify as a theory because it's unfalsifiable. And we've cleared the skies of chemtrails so you can just appreciate the anthropogenic cirrus clouds for what they are. It's just ice. Just ice, that's all. So no more chemtrails. 5G towers aren't scary. Aliens or illegal or otherwise aren't demons coming to kill you. Like we've pushed back against a lot of the orthodox conspiracy theories. People don't die in psyops. There are no false flag theories. There's no MK Ultra mind controlled mass shooters. That's fake. Planet Coast is J Pill's band. Yeah, I always tell the J Pillars that you're in the wrong saloon. I mean, what do you say? I mean, and it's just not specifically targeting them. But if you're part of a special interest group, if you're part of a, okay, I was worried it was the Jehovah's Witnesses. I made the mistake of leaving the door open to a follow-up visit. And the last time they showed up, they circled the block 3 times first. I felt like they were trying to elicit information, but I was doing the same because I was trying to figure out how do they sell this crap to people? Well, for one, they gave Jesus a haircut. In fact, I have it. If you haven't seen it, I tweeted it. They gave Jesus a haircut and trimmed his beard. He looks like that Chad meme. So they looks maxed Jesus. And her pitch was, don't you think the world's getting worse? Don't you think things are really bad? And that's a loaded question. I think it's a smuggled premise. And it's supposed to lead to, yeah, things are so bad. I'm so worried. And then her response was, well, here's the truth. The Bible is the way. So it's a sales pitch. And I saw it for what it was. I know the person's not being intentionally disingenuous, but that's how mind virus super spreaders are. Because religions are spread like plagues. That's how it works. That's how mind viruses spread. And I consider mind viruses, my definition would refer to those that are passively accepted memes, passively accepted units of cultural information. By passive, it's like you accept a smuggled premise, like you caught a mind virus. So, for example, the people who believe in chemtrails, they fell for a loaded question fallacy. Someone walked up to them one day, pointed at a plane with a trail, and said, "What are they spraying?" They caught the mind virus. They go home. I don't know. What were they spraying? What are they? So they asked their wife. They asked their friends. What are they spraying? Nobody knows. So now everyone who's heard that question, what are they spraying, who actually maintain it as a viable question, who don't know it's a bad question or a flawed question, they're now carriers of the mind virus known as chemtrails, because the premise contains, rather, the question contains a hidden assertion. What are they spraying is saying something unknown, mysterious, possibly bad, is deliberately being sprayed into the skies from the plane. And so it creates the illusion of a mystery, and it wrongly defines what you're seeing as a spray when it's actually not. It's frozen hot air. It's frozen exhaust. But that misconception gets smuggled in there passively. And so by active, I would suggest that the difference between the two is the active part is when you're consciously processing the information and checking it out for flaws, for misdirection, ulterior motives, a hidden premise. So a critical thinker would say, well, I think you smuggled the premise they're spraying something. You can only really logically ask, what is that trail? And then go from there. But also, this comes as an argument from ignorance. And the ignorance in this case is the result of deliberately ignoring available research and information that's been known for close to 100 years. So there's not even a mystery. So the whole question is flawed and it's a bad question, and it never should have spread beyond person number one. The person saying, what are they spraying, should have been answered with, why are you saying they're spraying it? This is well understood to be frozen exhaust. But you see what I mean? The idea here is that the mind viruses are basically things that you haven't properly screened with your mental immune system. And the government gave everybody mind aids. That's what the schools are for. Once you have that, once you have holes in your mental immune system, they can throw all kinds of mind viruses in and they interact. And that's why people are so robotic and NPC like when it comes to falling for the psyops. You have to keep in mind that everybody falls for the psyops, or they fall for the subplots, alt psyops. They all go into the programming. Like, we're a really small minority. Okay, let's continue here. Representative Luna, who never really brought us evidence of interdimensionals or portals like she said she would. And again, I'm saying it's lunatic. This is a world stage or name. She picked it like 7 years ago. She's talking about MK Ultra, They're bringing up old conspiracy theories and acting like they're going to solve it. And this is kind of reminding me of Q all over again, where you have some kook in the right, and last time it was MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, she's been retired and been replaced by Luna. And MTG's job was to act like, hey, I'm going to go talk to the government about adrenochrome. And they're winning over the conspiracy theorists. Like, oh, if you get us on your side, you vote for us, we'll get to the bottom of it. We'll find out who's abducting people and mutilating cows and doing experiments and creating mass shooters. Like they're acting like they're going to expose everything. And that was the sales pitch of Q that conscripted a lot of conspiracy theorists into their cause. A lot of conspiracy theorists were becoming auto hoaxers and they got dragged back into Trutherville by Marjorie Taylor Greene, QAnon, and Donald Trump. It was pretty sad to watch all these people fall for it, and they all know who they are. I mean, I'm assuming they're still in this arena. It's not like you go back to mainstream. And I'm not trying to chastise. I mean, if you fell for QAnon and you believed that JFK Jr. was going to come save you, I understand why. Because this is a deliberately created psychological warfare campaign that was very compelling. And you're saying back then MTG was doing the same thing. Hey, we're the government. Vote for us this midterm election, and we will expose all this stuff. So she's posturing as going against the system, as anti-establishment. But people will follow her. This is the face of controlled opposition, and this is someone who the conspiracy theorists will believe in. And another problem with the conspiracy theorist crowd is they still believe in elections. Like you're going to vote for the guy who you voted for the guy who faked an assassination attempt. They used to have the excuse of Donald Trump is fighting the deep state and they're doing these psyops around him. January 6th, he was set up. So they were able to pretend like Trump was still on their side and he's so deep in the system that, he's just caught up in the psyops. I had one QAnoner. He must have taken a really deep hit from his Q pipe. He said, oh, Donald Trump knows all this stuff, but if he says it, they'll use the 25th Amendment and throw him into a mental asylum. So he can tell us through his hints on Q, but he can't say it outright. And I'm like, okay, that's just coping. That's just imagination. That's just pure speculative fiction. It's user-generated fan fiction and cope. It's terrible. But it turns out he's part of the system. And all the proof you need is 7/13/2024, Butler, Pennsylvania. His participation in the cutting of his own ear and the fake blood means that he's 100% an insider and he's not on your team. And what's interesting about this is Professor Yang was talking to Tucker Carlson or something. No, he's talking to, God, there's a few individuals who've gone this way, but they're saying that Donald Trump was in on Butler. So you get this Professor Yang who comes off as credible to a lot of people. Not me. I never fell for him. He comes out and he says, oh, Donald Trump knew about Butler. He knew it was staged, but he agreed to do it. He agreed to get shot in the ear because it was part of an ancient Old Testament ritual. That was his explanation for Butler. Not, oh, it was fake. No, they actually hired a sniper to shoot the president in the ear. And then he was asked by Tucker Carlson, like, well, what Bible verse was it? Or where in the Bible? He's like, I don't know, it's in the Old Testament. Like, very vague, like made up on the spot type stuff. But that's what they do. They take the headline, Butler was fake and Trump was in on it, which is something I've said for some time. Trump was in on it. That should change your perspective on politics. If you're still a voter and you know that, you have cognitive dissonance. You can't handle the disharmony, and so you're just going to pretend like it's not a major contradiction. But you are betraying your own best interests and your own intellect if you play their game. I mean, the only winning move is not to play, like they say in that movie with Ferris Bueller. What is it? War Games. Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. The non-position. Taking an anti-position, taking a left-right position is a losing position. Let me go through your comments here really quick. Nate Watley says, my wife got mad at me for telling a door-to-door salesman to go away as soon as he walked up to the door. See, my problem is I like talking to people. And when I sell my art at the flea market, I'm mostly just chatting with strangers all day. I used to telemarket. And my only criticism was that I would get involved in conversations when I was bored. And so I think it's interesting. It's not hard to elicit from information, get people talking about themselves, and it's always entertaining. And I was entertained by this mind control victim. I saw through it. It was very interesting. It's the second time I've encountered one, and I noticed what they do is it's like they lead in with the trivial stuff, the stuff that you find agreeable, and then they go for the other stuff later. So like the last one that tried to recruit me, she actually took me to her house where they had like this home chapel. So she had her own cult. She said I could use her swimming pool. She was an old landlord. I was so creeped out, but she basically said, and it was at a weird time because it's like someone had just died, and she's like, well, the dead are just asleep. They don't go to heaven. I'm like, oh, whatever. And she's like, what happens is there's going to be an apocalypse. And if you live through it, you don't have to die. And when that happens, the dead will come back to life. So it's another zombie religion. And it's like, I don't want to be a zombie. Ollie Bongo says most women looks max, which is why there's a worldwide trillion beauty industry. I think men with SMV knowledge are now looks maxing to attract the highest SMV. Dubious, it's a psyop. I think it's a psyop because it was packaged and sold through the America First platform as though they invented it. Everybody's already doing it. Unless somebody, I mean, and this is like, I don't really even see it that often. It just seems like everybody on some level makes some effort to be presentable. I mean, even basic standards of cleanliness. I mean, it's not like people are not intentionally trying to improve, but the looks maxing movement is based upon a set of standards that nobody really adheres to or believes in. Look around you. It's not like the only people getting married and having kids are the ones who look like the optimized ideal version of a looks maxed male. It's average dudes, average women. Everything's just average. And the looks maxing movement has been attached to basically, misogynistic views, but also weirdly views that are contradicting traditional America values and MAGA and America First. So it's a very bizarre thing to have put out there. And it's target marketed at the incel culture. And the incel thing is built on resentment towards women because they believe the only reason why you don't have female companionship isn't because you're a basement dweller in 4chan, but it's because the Jews have created feminism to take the women into colleges and brainwash them into liking immigrants. So they feel victimized by Israel because they can't get laid. And that resentment has been targeted now with this idea that you can improve your odds, but it's also very black pill. It's like, well, if you don't have these traits, the best you can do is try to improve, but you're not going to have the higher SMV. I mean, Clavicles rated Logan Paul like a 6 out of 10. And his friend Mike Magic was like a 3. And nobody's a 10. So it's an unachievable ideal. And it's based upon some arbitrary standards that nobody cares about. And I'm not wrong. Walk around and look at the people and their levels of attractiveness. You'll find people match up with their own, but I don't know. I'm not a believer in looks maxing. I think it's a hoax. All right, let's continue here. Adu says, any narratives forming around the World Cup as it progresses? I haven't been following much. I did see some compelling videos about the idea that the soccer ball is symbolized as like a beehive, and I've seen some fascinating symbolic breakdowns. One of them showed the World Cup trophy with these like staircases built around it, and they compared it to the pyramid in Mexico where the games kicked off. And if you remember, that was the pyramid of the moon, where on the anniversary of the Littleton shootings, someone climbed up the pyramid and in the name of the Littleton shooters shot 13 people. 13 died in Littleton. He shot 13. 13 lunar months, temple of the moon. This happened while Artemis was on the way to the moon. So we looked at that, and so there's got to be some deeper ritual implications to this, and we're still looking. I also think it's interesting again that Shakira comes out on top of the globe with the scarlet pink dress, World Cup, the three six-pointed stars, 666, basically Whore of Babylon symbolism. And then she runs on the soccer field, and one person from every nation jumps on the field. And I was suggesting that the alien invasion is the one world. That's why she's on the globe. It represents the one unified world. We're just one. The elimination of all borders. Because if they eliminated all borders and all distinctions between nations, we're all aliens. That's the alien invasion. So everyone on the field jumping over the fence represented the ubiquitous alien invasion, where if everybody's an alien, nobody is an alien. That's the one world agenda that they've packaged as a literal alien invasion. But the literal alien invasion is becoming one world. And then the second part of it involves what I was going to get into here, the level of sophistication that AI is reaching. Sam Altman was just talking about this, that by 20, let's see if I can pull this post up. Whenever I see the name Sam Altman, it looks like Sam A-I-T-M-A-N, but Sam Altman. He says, we may reach superintelligence by the end of 2028, meaning we have 2 years left. Enjoy your jobs while they last. Super intelligent will run major companies better than any CEO. They'll do better research than our best scientists. We're 2 years away from our first true version of super intelligence. By the end of 2028, the intellectual capacity inside data centers may exceed the intellectual capacity outside of them. So here he is at the AI summit talking about the arrival of superintelligence. And I was saying that the alien invasion could be conditioning us to accept the inevitable confrontation with the higher intelligence. And what are you going to do? You're going to give it control. Like, hey, we've made a mess of the world. We've polluted it. We're nuking each other. And we have borders because we're scared of each other. What can we do? And the aliens are obviously going to remove our borders and give us better tech and make us all friends. AI can do the same thing. AI will be our savior. It's going to unite mankind, and it's going to realize that this is suboptimal. If we have one world, one religion, it'll run much smoother. And this is basically Skynet we're talking about. So Skynet in 2 years. And it's probably going to be fake. As in, it might still be like the Wizard of Oz, a very impressive illusion, but ultimately somebody's behind it, controlling the levers. It's not like a super intelligence is going to look at the news and say, hey, about 10% of the shit is fake. And the fake stuff gets 90%, it gets the other 90% looking at it. It's warping your news cycles, warping your history, warping your geopolitics. You all live in a fictional universe as a result of this. And the people in control are using fake events to fabricate your history and put you in an alternative universe, which is like a religion. And they are the priesthood. And you've been made subjects and you're ignorant of it. No, the super intelligence isn't going to see through media. And it's not because it's not super intelligent. It's because they're still going to control it. Same thing with AI. AI, and I got a prompt and it said, let us develop your course for you. Because I was making my course, which I posted on infiniteplanesociety.com. Charlie Kirk is alive. And I was going to just see, what is this thing going to say? Because I wrote down the synopsis for my course, and all it did was contradict me. It tried to say, well, this is why conspiracy theories spread. And I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. We're doing a meta script analysis of a fake event. I hear Godzilla. Oh, I need to move that Godzilla up to the top. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, Thirst for Truth. The IPS think tank would not exist without the support and participation and research of the think tank. And the think tank has been consistently active and building on the same foundation for a number of years now. And we have broken new ground. We're pioneers in this area. We have founded a true alternative media, at least an alternative media analysis platform, we're not part of the controlled opposition like everybody else is. We're the ones who figured out what predictive programming is. It's not like it's a theory. Predictive programming isn't a conspiracy theory. It's not a misinterpretation of data. It's not a conclusion arrived at through selectivity bias or Texas sharpshooter fallacy. No, it's actually structural. It's a description of the alignment between entertainment and fake events. And they do this for a lot of reasons, which we talk about frequently, and I'm talking about it in the course as well. This idea that they're using predictive programming to condition you to hate people in advance, like Erica Kirk or Donald Trump, or to believe certain things to be inevitable and true and believable. They set your frame of reference. They tap into your RAS, the reticular activation center, the part that gets your eyes to be activated when a certain thing that you've been prepped to notice gets into your field of view. Because you're picking up so much anyway through your periphery that you only focus on what you choose to focus on, but everything else is still there. The background is still content that's being absorbed or noticed, but you're not consciously focusing on it. But when you're activated in this way, and it's all subconscious, you will notice it. So it's part of the show. The predictive stuff is almost advertising, conditioning as well, propaganda placement. And when I said that people had been conditioned to have Trump derangement syndrome, if you think back to all the various ways they presented you Trump in movies, this is all because you associate these things. What you process through the movies gets processed as memories, and they're filling up your mind with programming so that you are going to be responding in a predictable way. So the reason why I wasn't cheering the death of Homelander is I'm deprogrammed. I don't have that programming in me to make me hate Trump or hate Homelander. And why would I hate Trump? I mean, I'm not going to be responding emotionally to a World Wrestling Entertainment character turned into a president. I'm not going to be responding emotionally to a face of what is really some type of machinery that is, largely behind the curtains. And these faces are there to mostly, like red herrings, distract you from, what's, behind the curtain. Like we're talking about Charlie Kirk, for example. The reason why they want you to believe he's dead is that to contemplate his aliveness is to arrive at the conclusion that the number of people involved to make that fakery happen is not only including a lot of people who people have trusted their whole lives and follow politically, but it suggests that they're all in on some kind of intentional deception. You've been stabbed in the back by Charlie Kirk. You've been stabbed in the back by Donald Trump. And people still want to vote. They still want to vote. That's what I'm saying. You can, but you're voting for a crisis actor. And you can. One of my points was people used to make excuses for Trump because he's obviously stuck in the system. He's fighting it from within. But ever since Butler, nope, he's on the same team as the PSYOP entertainment complex. Erica says the underclass will still be outside the control grid. Yeah, I doubt it. Here's the issue, though. The issue is the world stage is unavoidable. It's the default worldview. You could have a religion on top of it, but it is the dominant paradigm. You can't really escape it without consciously observing it. You have to be able to observe and have the ability to delineate between real and fake, and more importantly, the two timelines. You have to be able to separate the two timelines, not just in the present. It's very easy to look at the news and say that's fake, that's a lie, that's a hoax. But the real work here, the real important part, is looking back and removing from your set of assumptions about the world all those things that you were told were real, and then you have to subtract their effects and remove that from your frame of reference. That's the deprogramming. You have to get rid of all the mind viruses in your past. And funnily enough, this is very much like the Scientology concept of clearing. Their idea is that Throughout your life, you're passively collecting what they call engrams, which are like mind viruses, units of information that you passively get attached, but that these things can accumulate and affect your present state. Your emotional states, your moods, your thinking is all going to be occulted or affected in some negative way by a lot of these things that are attached to what they call your timeline or your time track. So when you go through auditing, you're going through your past and you're attempting to remove all these bad assumptions, bad experiences from your frame of reference. They call it clearing. I mean, it's not a bad idea as far as therapy goes, I suppose, but what we're talking about is somewhat similar, where you do have to look into your past and eliminate all the fake events from your presuppositions because those will affect how you interpret present events. And then knowledge of how they're faked will also affect how you interpret present day events. So when I look at the present day news and I see an event that looks stagey, fakeable and stagey, I'll say so because, hey, this resembles 30 other events that we've analyzed. It has overlapping hoax indicators. So when we look at these things, we have a very informed perspective on it. That's why it's important to look at the past, to broaden your field of your references when it comes to looking at present day events, and also to eliminate misconceptions. Yes, clear cutting the forest, says Copaesthetic. The Daily Beast used to spy on us. They were in our Discord server, and one of their writers had observed us, and they said that we are conducting the information equivalent of clear cutting a forest. And we are. It's the forest of fakery. I wrote a allegory about it. It's in the book, Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, about how the truther movement is led by loudmouths who are saying, hey, this tree is fake, this tree is fake, and getting all the free thinkers to gather around what is really a fake tree. And while they're stuck analyzing the occasional fake tree, another person wanders off and finds out every tree is fake. So what's happening is the loudmouths are diverting the attention from the wider field of fakery and hyper-focusing on limited hangout events. Like they let a little bit of truth out so they can find out who's in the know. They create the conspiracy theory that doesn't tell you the whole truth, but gets enough to find out, who knows or who's looking, who's not falling for the mainstream, and then they lead that group and they build them into a coalition. Trutherville is a limited hangout operation. All the conspiracy theories are the result of government-created counterculture. That's what conspiracy theories truly are. So this idea here, of course, is that the big picture is looking at I call it the meta script, and conspiracy theories are subplots. 33 says, Owen definitely looks strung out and different. Yeah, somebody had said drugs. Let's go back to our analysis of Owen Shoyer. Has he been replaced? Yeah, he's so important to the system that him getting out of line made it necessary for them to not just get rid of him, but they had to replace him because they can't go on without Owen. And the one they replaced him with has been debated as looking closer to as Kathy Griffin, Aunt Gladys from Weapons, Heath Ledger, Beetlejuice, or Buffalo Bill. But he doesn't look like the original Owen. The original Owen even looked like the QAnon shaman. But this is a whole new face. But it might work because he's being talked about. Everyone is talking about Owen Shoyer. Nobody cared. Now everybody cares. So this might be genius. I'm only observing. I'm not criticizing it. Like I might need to grow out a mustache and dye my hair orange. The reason I won't is that I don't think that it will attract the audience that we're actually looking for. Adu T611 says, which of the third world aliens will win the World Cup? Does everybody here think that the games are rigged? I walk into homes, family, friends, and they have a big screen and everybody's watching the game. And I just see a big green square on the wall. And someone asked me the other day, and it's like a room full of people. They're like, "Do you like? Are you watching the games?" And I told them the truth. I was like, I try really hard to like soccer and sports, and I can't. Like, I can't even follow the ball for more than 2 seconds. Like, they're like cats. They're like, cats with like a laser pen. They're like fixated on it, and I just can't get myself to care. It must be something wrong with me. I remember when I was in the army, they would have certain days where instead of physical fitness, we could play volleyball. And I hated those days. I would rather be running and exercising and challenging myself, and they want to hit a ball around. And I would just stand there. I would refuse to move. And it really piss off my teammates. Nobody wanted me. And I literally didn't care. I don't care if the ball was even close to me. And it was just, to them it was a joke. But, I was like, no, I'm not even going to pretend to give a about the game. Sorry if you like the game. No shade. There's something wrong with me. It's not you. I think I'm suspicious about the fact that they use professional sports to draw out some kind of like tribalism, mob psychology, which isn't really a bad thing. I mean, you see it at concerts and other events, but with sports, it takes on a different level. Like you'll see sports teams fighting each other in the streets over jerseys. You don't see, like people of different musical genre preferences battling in the streets, like classical music people fighting against rappers. Like you don't see that. You see it in sports all the time. This is it. Ann says, I don't like sports either. I think they're boring. I like them in person. I will watch a game in person and have fun. It's different in person. I think it's just on TV, it's boring. Running. I used to run a lot, and I can't figure out it's either the most enjoyable form of torture or the least enjoyable form of exercise. Like running is just to me it's it's not fun. It's almost masochistic. I think I got burnt out on it halfway through my first marathon because my feet, I guess the shoes weren't tight enough or they were too heavy, but it felt like somebody was paddling the bottom of my feet. And I had to endure that for another 13 miles. And I fell on my face like 3 times, and I was one of the last ones to finish. And I remember halfway through thinking, none of my friends do this. Why am I doing this? This is boring. And this is going to take a lot out of me over the next few days. So, I mean, I'm kind of a quitter. I did it, but I just thought I'm not going to do it again. I don't hate myself. 33 says sports is totally rigged because of online gambling. Is it riggable? That's the question. Yeah, I mean, to what extent is it riggable? We can't make a blanket statement necessarily, although it's probably not outside the realm of possibility for a game, a particular play, to be completely choreographed. I mean, you're talking about two teams, um, identical skill sets. It wouldn't be that difficult to run some type of a psyop through sports or a staged play, but it would require collusion between both sides. And that's the part the public won't see. So we're talking about the news and fake events, and two sides are colluding to fake the events. The Charlie Kirk thing was the result of both sides of participating in the hoax. So the reason why people won't see through sports rigging if it's rigged is they won't recognize or they won't want to even contemplate. Because it's a huge betrayal that behind the scenes it's rigged at that level. Duet Celeste says, I used to love watching the World Cup and the European Cup, but I stopped watching sports when I found out everything is rigged in 2020. Maybe that's it. Like maybe on some level, I'm somewhat like intuitively grasping that I don't trust the production. Adu T611 says, I've been reading The Fix Is In by Brian Toohey, trying to see if it's occurring in the World Cup. Yeah, I should probably read that. The Fix Is In. I'll find the audiobook because I think that's a very good question to ask. We talk about fake ability, fake at scale. Like, would it mean all the players? No. How many players would you need on each team to subvert a game? Do you remember Snake Eyes? The movie Snake Eyes? It starts up with a fight. Tyler the Executioner, Charlie Kirkland gets killed. Anyway, we were watching that movie, the boxing match, and I think in a lot of movies you have this thing of like a boxer taking a fall at a certain round. Like that's easy to rig. Wait, wasn't that fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul rigged? That one is pretty rigged. Or Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul. Was that rigged? Like honestly, it looked to me like Logan Paul was already unconscious and Floyd Mayweather was holding him up. And Paul's brain had been rattled. If you heard him afterward, he was like inviting himself over to a barbecue with the Floyd Mayweather family. He just seemed like, I guess the term is punch drunk. I mean, he did take a real beating, but it doesn't mean the thing wasn't rigged. I mean, it's an exhibition, not a real fight. 33 says the players are doing it themselves. It's been proven by video evidence. Yeah, they can screw up the game, sure. But, okay, for example, there's that, what was his name? Was it Damar Hamlin? The guy who had the heart attack on the field, and he had made this gesture of the heart famous, and everything in his life had to do with 33s. And the whole thing looked rigged. The ambulance wasn't marked as an ambulance when it took him off the field. And everybody was kneeling for Damar Hamlin, and it looked like Masons kneeling around the corpse of Hiram Abiff. And the only person not kneeling was some guy with a jersey that said Neil, number 33. So there was all kinds of weirdness around that whole event. And we can revisit that whole psyop, but the whole thing looked fake. And the whole team was participating in it. And some of these football players looked like they were acting, like they were fake crying. So it brought up the question, could they have faked a play? Could this thing be rigged? Could all the players be in on something? And what I took out of it, my interpretation, is that to be at that level of sports is to be bound by certain oaths, rules, NDAs, to be inside of a club. And you can't separate mainstream entertainment, mainstream news from government-run psyops. So why would sports be exempt? So I think sports is entirely compromisable, compromised, controllable, easy to manipulate, and it doesn't seem to me it doesn't seem to be a stretch to me that it could be entirely rigged. Our elections are rigged. You don't think they're rigging the ball games? It's also a nice idea to think that you can just look to sports for something pure and objective. Get away from all the news and the drama and just watch people compete, in a fair fight by rules that are understood and respected. And I don't think people want to lose that. It's like the last thing they have. It's like, I'm going to take that from them. Yep, sorry. I'm going to take away your delusions about government, religion, sports, all of your favorite movie stars and directors. And I'm not trying to be black pill here, but we have to be realists. We're coming in here setting up a town called Realville in the middle of the world stage adjacent to Trutherville. And Realville is kind of small right now, but it's going to blow up. And a lot of what we are going to be pointing out is not going to go well with people who like things the way they are. Some people are like, don't touch my chemtrails. Don't you dare tell me Ed McMahon didn't pass out big checks. Like these people will defend, they will die on these hills. I know people who will die on the chemtrail hill. I get criticisms from people all the time. In fact, I usually give them hearts because I appreciate your opinions. So someone hit me up recently and he said something, here it is. Tim is all good with immigration. And if he says you oppose it, you're contradicting yourself on declining populations. Yes, I did say that. I said, the same people who are saying that, hey, nobody's having kids, our birth rate's too low, we're dying, are against immigrants. I'm like, well, there's your numbers problem solved. And I said that that's just because the truth of it is they're not worried about the populations going down. They're promulgating indirectly the false belief in white genocide and that whites are going extinct. We don't want to be replaced by non-whites. That's what they're actually saying. And I just try to get that out of them. He says this, okay, anyway, he goes on to say, it's a very Jewish thing to say. So he's accusing me of working for Israel and Mossad. Yeah. Yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu signs my paychecks. And Delta Airlines gives me frequent flyer miles every time I contradict chemtrails. Like, what does that even mean? These J-pill people are, well, the brains are mush, but they're very simplistic. It's like, if you don't agree with me, you're one of them. They're very simplistic. And my question is, what are you doing in our think tank? Like, what is interesting here to you? You know, it's like if you're a vegan, you're not going to go to a steakhouse. If you're a J-pillar, why are you going to a place where we fundamentally disbelieve in all of the news events and historic events that created your worldview? We don't even believe in the world that you live in. You live in fictive level 1. You're a sim in Westworld. You live in a hyper reality, a fictional universe, and you don't even know it. You're responding to characters on a world stage, ignorantly engaging as though it's real, and then you're going to chastise me for not taking your myths seriously. Like, I'm a non-believer in your News Testament religion. Your meta scripture is being deconstructed here. We're not following your subplots and believing in it. It's like we're non-believers. World stagers are believers. If you're a J-pillar, you're a believer by definition. A believer in what? Well, to be a J-pillar, to claim that this group controls the world, you have to believe all these things from history that you blame on them to be real. Once you realize that our history isn't to be trusted any more than you trust your mainstream news media, and you recognize how many of these things were psyops, then you're left without a scapegoat that you can readily identify, that you can conveniently point at one particular group and say they did it. We have specifics. You can't name names. We can name names. And not just directors and writers, but people in police, governments, hospitals, DHS. Like, we could create a list of those who you could say are part of the PSYOP entertainment complex, to their shame. I mean, honestly, if you're a film director or a writer and you've served as a propaganda conduit consciously for this program, you are basically guilty of committing, psychological warfare against the American population. It's like MK Ultra is being talked about by Rep Luna. This is worse than MK Ultra, because that's just a conspiracy theory. This is the real thing. All right, let's continue. Maybe a demographic replacement is a goal of theirs. Is it okay to ask that question? So the J-pillar thinks he's being replaced. He's being extincted, holocausted. So his name is Tilted Tables. So Tilted Tables is an endangered white person. And I'm a Jew trying to get him killed. All Western nations have had mass migration forced on them. You call me a far-right extremist? Blah, blah, blah. Millions more flood into our countries. It's all fake. Yeah. Okay, so again, what he's saying is passionate. It's boilerplate. It's copy pasta. It's what we hear every single midterms. My response was, every one of your points has a counterpart from the left, which claims that you are the enemy. Those that are opposed to globalism, those who support nationalism, specifically white nationalism, are colonizers and oppressors and the real problem in the world. You're simply stuck on your side of the playground. You're not a victim. You're not oppressed. You are a propaganda mule. And that's my point. For every person who's going to gripe, for every far-right J-pill person griping about being exterminated, replaced, there's someone on the left who's saying, you're oppressing me. The system is oppressing me. The man is oppressing me. So he's on the other side of the political horseshoe. And to be in that political horseshoe is to be a participant in the triangulation. The triangulation between the two sides is designed that way. They're maintained in these polarities so that every fake event can cause a fight. The fight over the fake event makes it real because their starting point is it's real, let's fight over it, not did this even happen. So they both agree. It's the Hegelian dialectic thing, and they fall for it every single time. So J-pill, or critical Israel theory, is the other side of critical race theory. It's the same mentality. It's the same architecture. So if you're J-pill, you're basically telling me that you're the equivalent of a blue hair Antifa fighting the cops because they're oppressing racial minorities for the white power system. So you're the same thing. So what I do with these people is I listen to them, I read their copy pasta, unoriginal, boilerplate, red pill or J pill nonsense, and I acknowledge it because what we want to do is not delete them, but point out I fundamentally disagree with you. Because that point of disagreement is the wall that we're building between Trutherville and Realville. So if you don't know what the world stage looks like, you got the circle, then you have the triangle. You can put an eyeball at the top. This represents the two sides, right, left, and then it's superimposed over the political horseshoe. And the two extremes are very close to one another at the end. So critical race theory and critical Israel theory are actually very close to each other on opposite sides of the political horseshoe. It's called a horseshoe because the sides don't actually connect. So it's not a full circle, but it's close. They almost go full circle. But this view has also the main and the alt. And the main side is Normieville. Most people you know live in Normieville. The other side is Trutherville, which is the controlled opposition community built of limited hangouts, government manufactured counterculture. All the conspiracies are metascript subplots. But now, here we are in the off-world stage, outside of their closed system, our perspective informed by news bending, history bending, predictive concurrent programming, psyops, fakeability, the history of fakery, systemic fakery, and that knowledge, that perspective, that view that includes these in our perspective makes us skeptics of the two sides. And they are not skeptical. They're incredulous of the other side. They automatically reject the other side. They're not skeptics. Now, my point of it is, next to Trutherville, there's a new town called Realville. We just set up. Every person who graduates from the IPS Institute of Metascript Deconstruction becomes a de facto citizen of Realville, as do our Discord members. So there's about 200 of us so far. I realize we have like 2,000 subs. More of you should join Discord or take the course just so we can get all on the same sheet and get a better idea of how big of a presence we are. And my thinking here is that those who are 90% fed up with Trutherville conspiracy claptrap, who are tired of seeing through fake stuff, but still having to go along with the mob who are still thinking that these things are real, eventually those people will gravitate towards where we are. Mixlick says, everything feels fake. Absolutely everything. The only type I felt alive when I saw a 9-foot Bigfoot crossing the road in front of me last year. 9 foot. You know, I heard this story about Dogman, and it sounded super believable. I have no experience with cryptids. I see raccoons, skunks, and feral cats. No cryptids here. I would be... Look, so I've said before that most likely Bigfoot is a bear, because bears will walk on their hind legs. So the first thing I would ask would be, are there bears where you are? But I don't know. I'm very curious about that. I've heard different versions. There's some versions of the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti where they're supernatural beings, transdimensionals. I don't know. Not really sure. But I always bring in, what is the I call it maybe Bigfoot logic, which is when you don't know what it is, so you insert something that hasn't been proven to exist as a possibility. You can't actually do that until you've ruled out everything else. So if there are no bears in your area, well, then we can talk about Bigfoot. Are there local, myths, stories, folklore reflecting giant hairy people in the woods? Because that's true here. There are certain areas here where there's local superstitions and myths. I find it all to be interesting. I certainly don't think we have everything figured out. I'm pretty sure that cattle mutilations are done by coyotes and not aliens, however, because I helped out a friend. Their cat was out one night on a full moon, and they found it, and it had been basically, well, it looked like something had just basically eaten out the whole stomach area. And the animal control said, "Oh, those are coyotes. You can't let your dogs and cats out at night because these things will jump a 6-foot fence, and they go for the warm, pre-digested food in the bellies, the soft spots." And if you look at cattle mutilations, and I brought this up. I said, "Is this what they do to cows? Do they just eat the soft parts and leave the rest?" And that's been presented as evidence of aliens and black helicopters. No, it's just coyotes. Duet Celeste says the narrative about Jays having been thrown out of 109 countries doesn't make sense. Yeah, I question all these things. The only reason it's even relevant today in this discussion is because it's part of the world stage infrastructure. The two sides on their extremes are built around a scapegoat narrative and wokeism. And so J Pill is woke right. And someone in chat didn't, they said there's no such thing. So the only reason I'm talking about this, we talked about this in Discord a couple days ago. Woke left is pretty well defined. Wokeism, though, is what we're talking about. And wokeism isn't just a left thing. Wokeism is when you become awake to some suppressed or hidden truth about how the world really works. And what you find out is that you are oppressed, and you find out who the oppressor is. But no one else knows because they're asleep. And that means that you're awake. And since you're awake, you have this obligation to wake other people up. So this is a way that red pills operate, where they find out, oh, the Illuminati, the bankers, the Jesuits, the Jays are in control. So what do? We got to wake people up. Alex Jones, oh, people are waking up. Alex Jones woke me up. I'm awake. I'm Bob the awake truther. You're awake to what? How the world secretly works, the chemtrails, the 5G towers, the secret plot to make white people go extinct with immigration. That's the wokeism of red pill and the wokeism of the right. The difference is J pill goes from let's blame the Trilateral Commission and the UN and the globalists to let's blame the Jays. The reason why red pill exists is it gets a wider audience for the same ideas that are repackaged with euphemisms. Now they can reach a multicultural audience. They can get women involved because J pill is intrinsically misogynistic. I was going to say sexist, but woke left is also sexist. Woke left is misandrist. Woke left, it says toxic masculinity because they believe that masculinity is toxic. Woke right on the extreme is anti-feminism because they view essentially their views are the mirror of how the left views men. It's actually built into the structure. Left is very female coded, right is male coded. It breaks down to this basic division. The left is characterized by openness to the other. The right is characterized by closed borders, closed off to the others. That's why you have globalism versus nationalism. That's why you have closed borders, open borders. We love illegal immigrants. We hate illegal immigrants. We love extraterrestrials. Those things are demons. Our skin is open to vaccine injections. Our skin is closed. We're anti-vax. Closed, open. And it's the relationship to the other, to the state, to the mind control, ultimately, because the left automatically adheres to the mainstream paradigm. At least on the right and the alternative, they're making an effort to push away from that. The problem is they got trapped in the controlled opposition alternative. However, a certain number of them have seen through both sides. And right now, I see a lot of effort to damage control. They're bad psyops. They're trying to damage control Charlie Kirk being alive right now. That's like one of their main agendas. How do we fix this story? How do we maintain the integrity of our world stage theater when they're discrediting our main actor? And so they're coming up with, well, just talk about the exploding mic. Talk about witness protection. Get the biggest voices, Alex Jones, Jesse on Fire, and have them make up stories. Get Professor Yang, who's very credible to a lot of people, to talk about how Charlie Kirk was sacrificed. I'm sorry, somebody needs to define sacrifice. Like, what movie did you get this from? Is that even a thing? And there are still people who believe in adrenochrome, but the whole QAnon adrenochrome is repackaged J-pill. It's blood libel, but dressed up in a new context. I mean, think about it. They said JFK was the second coming of Jesus. The same people who killed Jesus killed JFK. They actually made that connection. Jews killed Jesus. Jews killed JFK. Jews killed Charlie Kirk. You see, it's their perennial enemy. It's always going to be this dialectic, critical Israel theory, Jays versus us. And on the left, it's always racism or systemic oppression versus us. So it's basically a parallel system. Cope says Auto Hoaxville. Yeah, we could call it that. I'm just saying Realville because you got Normie, Trutherville. Real because, unlike everyone else, we're not operating under the premise that fake stuff is real. We're basically saying, well, that's fake, that's real. We delineate between the two. Because you can live in the Normieville and you're living in a hyper reality, real plus fake. Trutherville is real plus fake, and then more fake on top of it. It's actually a deeper level of programming. It's kind of interesting how if the mainstream propaganda doesn't work on you, they hit you up with something harder. And you're actually more of a propaganda addict. You're deeper in the matrix, the deeper you go into Trutherville. If you believe everything in Trutherville, you have adopted an alternative set of beliefs that are built upon the foundation of the mainstream. But the invasion of the world stage is about to formally commence. It's just, I was thinking July 5th as a shout out to J.R. Bob Dobbs, the world's greatest salesman. July 5th is the date that he claimed, or that it is claimed, that the aliens will invade. They called them the X-ists from Planet X. And the theory was that at 7:30 a.m. on July 5th, 1998, the X-ists would invade the Earth with flying saucers. And they would rapture those who are of the right bloodline. Weirdly enough, it's a cult. It's the subgenius cult. Weirdly enough, they claim that their bloodline is related to Yeti. Speaking of Bigfoot, they call themselves Yetikin. They saw the Yeti, Bigfoot, as these super intelligent, magical, transdimensional beings who are the true source of all the ancient myths. But anyway, it's another cult. But July 5th is their day of the big revelation, the day of the invasion. And I was thinking, I've described us as alien anthropologists for some time, as we've been observing from afar, from the off-world stage perspective, examining how this thing works. And now that we're actually going to colonize, encroach, and build our infrastructure within, we need to, basically settle on a date, but now we're moving from alien anthropologists into alien invaders. So what better day to stage an alien invasion than July 5th? If you have a better date, let me know. But as of right now, that's the idea. And it'll be basically not necessarily a full manifesto, but a statement of intent. Like, what exactly is the IPS think tank's mission? Because if you remember, in 2023-ish, I said we're quarantining. We're leaving the off-world stage, and we're just not focusing on numbers, but we're going to codify our methodology, auto-hoaxing, metascript, which we've done. The handbook for the recently deprogrammed is a result of this think tank and our work. I wrote it, but it's based on the think tank's best ideas and our way of processing media. We've refined it to a point where it has established that it is a valid model and it accurately describes things as they are. So now that we have that mission done, we quarantined long enough, we spent enough time burning bridges with the J pill, the chemtrail huffers, all of the false flaggers, the MAGAs, the Qers, the red pillars. We've basically separated ourselves. We're a distinct entity. We're a self-aware demographic. So now we need to scale up. And you can't scale up if you remain outside of their system. So now is the part where we invade, and with the invasion will be the more mission-oriented live streams. We will have, like we used to do, and we accomplished quite a lot in our previous incarnation in that arena. But now we're not focused on just one institution. We're not just talking about NASA. Suzette Ann says, I'm still waiting for the big, highly produced alien invasion like Independence Day. Yeah, I'm feeling like that was all set up to get us to believe in aliens, for alienology, aliens as the new iteration of angel. So they have that same structure from the old world religion built into the new one, dressing it up with science fiction so people don't know it's superstition and mysticism and not actual science. And I also think the conditioning was there so that when the superintelligence arrives from Sam Altman, we will all kowtow to it and let it control us. Because we've been conditioned that eventually the aliens are going to arrive and they're going to take over because we will ask them, we will beg them to. Duet Celeste says, I've been trying to convince someone that no one dies in PsyOps. He was on to the fact that Citizen Vigilante is a PSYOP and wrote so in the live chat of an interviewer. Oh, with an interview with the movie maker. Yeah, nobody dies in PSYOPs. That's a guardrail that people like. The guardrail is the bloody guardrail. If you say nobody dies in PSYOPs and somebody says, oh, they do, well, then they're stuck behind the bloody guardrail. They're stuck behind the event was real. And they'll say, and I've heard this a million times from red pillars, the real shrill, screechy ones. They'll say things like, oh, so you just think that the government loves you so much that it's not going to kill people. You just think that the satanic cabal of Illuminati tyrants that run the world love us so much. So they try to shame me for suggesting that they're not killing people. I'm not saying, I'm not implying that it's a benevolent thing to use PSYOPs on us. But I'm saying that it doesn't make sense to kill people in simulations. It doesn't make sense. Their argument rests on what you would call the appeal to motive fallacy. Their argument is, the bad guys are so bad, why wouldn't they do this? Like, oh, you're so bad, why wouldn't you do that? That's not an argument for the thing. It's fallacious, and it's used for a reason. That bad reasoning keeps people under the false assumption that the fake events are real. So if the subplot is real, as in the false flag theory, then the plot is real. The meta-scripted plot, the fake event, the original script. So the blood, the death, the maintaining of the illusion of death, that's what keeps them from disengaging from fake events. So I call it the bloody guardrail. And if you still fall for that, I would say go up to the guardrail And, taste the blood and you'll see it's corn syrup. It's theatrical blood. It's not real. But if people want to believe it, what are you gonna do? They're death clingers. They're just gonna cling on to that. Cling on to that bloody guardrail. Defend the mainstream media. Be a mainstream media alt programming advocate by all means. And we need to challenge them, and that's why we're establishing Realville. We need to challenge them though. We need to get them to admit to their guardrails. Show me your guardrails. Show me what lies you defend. What hill will you die on? And then we challenge them on those points, because what it does is it creates a distinction between us and them. And we need to make that distinction, that we are a separate entity. So those who aren't part of that subset of people who believe these things will jump on board with where we're looking. And what they really stand on is a false moral high ground, and the idea too of outrage. Like, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. If you're not triggered, you're not paying attention. And if you're a true skeptic, you're the opposite of triggered. You're no longer triggerable. The reason why they use triggering events is because if they can get you to emotionally respond, it shuts off your intellect. If you're a skeptic, you don't believe headlines and respond like a raging truther. What you do instead, and you'll notice, raging truthers are like raging Antifa. They're triggered. So if you're triggered, it means that you're not waiting for more information. You're not investigating. No, you're actually reacting. Mixlook says, Baja, notice its own Shoyer. Yeah, look, this is insane. I mean, to me, it just says it's a rebranding, but it's also, I mean, I don't know. It's perplexing. I don't want to dwell on it very much. I'm going to wait for Alex Jones's take, because it did seem to me that Alex Jones was treated unfairly by this guy, stealing his shtick, attempting to be a Timu Alex Jones. Plain decoded, are you the agent standing by? Yeah, if you call 1-888-866 hoax. Agent standing by is actually me. That is correct. It is I. Excuse me. I think he was willing to consider my statement that nobody dies in psyops, says Duet, but he wasn't emotionally invested in the fake dead. Most people are emotional. Well, wait until you say nobody died in 9/11. Start with that. Slaughter the big sacred cows first, and then make your way down. Yeah, obviously nobody died at Sandy Hook. What died at Sandy Hook was Alex Jones's credibility as anything other than a pawn of the PSYOP entertainment complex. That was the end of his credibility, because he never investigated it as fake. But he carried that label, he took that and was sued over it, but he never actually asserted that. He never made the case strongly, and he treated every subsequent event as real. I mean, I couldn't believe when I heard even Jim Fetzer and Wolfgang Helbig, both of these guys have dissected Sandy Hook to death. But then they see Parkland, and they're like, oh, that's real. No, it doesn't work this way. You can't just say Parkland was real and this one was fake without checking the same exact elements. The same, look for the same hoax indicators. Does it check off the same boxes? And it has all the same stuff. And that's the definition of a limited hangout, where you have an event that's allowed to get out there as fake, and they get all the people who are noticing, and they control that demographic. It's one fake tree. The approved fake tree for our operatives to focus on is Sandy Hook, but none of the other fake trees are to be looked at through the same lens. When have you seen these individuals talking about subsequent shootings like Annunciation or Christchurch or others and saying, oh, it was all staged and fake? No. They'll say it was staged by Israel. It was staged by the fill in the blank nefarious organization. But when they say staged, they mean it's real, but someone else did it. So when we use these words like hoax, can't use the word hoax very accurately these days, because we're not talking about a small group tricking the news, because the news media constructs the event with the help of these other agencies that are conducting the simulation. So it's not accurate to call it a hoax. Staged it can be ambiguous. It can be staged but real. So how do we say staged and fake? I'll say simulated event, simulated historic event, PR stunt, staged and fake, or staged hoax. But we have to use the terms properly. What we have to avoid are terms like false flag. False flag presumes people died. Plain Decoded says Russian vids calls all things fake. Well, fake needs qualification. Trump took away the sting of that word when he started calling Democrat news fake. Oh, you're the fake news. I was like, no, all the news is fake. It all rests upon the world stage simulated or simulation. You could call it a sim. So all news is fake. I mean, you could say, well, I mean, and I'm not saying that literally. I mean, but the point of it is that both Democrat and Republican news partake in fakery. And even if a news story is objectively reporting facts and a real event, it's still being contextualized within that simulation. So it's real, resting upon an edifice of fake. What does that mean? Well, it's like you take a fact and you drop it in. It's just you drop it into a closed system where it loses its relevance. The facts don't exist in isolation. You know, you can say Charlie Kirk was squibbed and still keep it in their subplot. Yeah, he squibbed himself to get away from Erica and Netanyahu. Okay, well, you just maintained the world stage structure there, and you gave it an out. Which I pointed out the contradiction of faking your death publicly. They wouldn't do that. But if you're off world stage, you'll say, well, he was squibbed because Charlie Kirk never existed. Again, go to infiniteplainsociety.com. There's a free course up for you called Charlie Kirk is Not Dead. It's the PSYOP Deconstruction Zone, the IPS Institute of Metascript Deconstruction and Mind War Analysis. It's open. There's a course on there called Intro to Metascript if you want to catch up and really be on the same page as us. It has all the main ideas that I elaborate on in the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. So the metascript is what I call the secondary timeline of fake events, the one that merges with real through news and merges with our history. So that course is available right now. And then there's a free course next to it. And the free course is on Charlie Kirk, how he's not dead, and how all the conspiracy theories are fake. The conspiracy theories are planted narratives to keep you from recognizing the depth of the fakery. And one thing I address in this course that Jesse on Fire doesn't talk about, that Professor Yang doesn't talk about, that Candace Owens doesn't talk about, is the concurrent programming and how extensive it is. From Charlie Sheen and Joe Rogan to Heads of State, Tempest, not to mention previous things like Snake Eyes, the video from Emerson Drive. There's even a Human Events episode 33 where Charlie Kirk is talking to a guy named Tyler about an execution on September 10th. A televised execution from 1977. I mean, we've got numerous examples of this. Now, Plain Decoded mentioned RV calling things fake. Russian vids is sort of an auto hoaxer type for the most part, but I think he's also still a J pillar. And so if he's J pill, he's been discredited because he's woke right. So I would check up on that. Ask him if he's woke right, and if he's woke right, honestly, where is he going to lead you? Where does Alex Jonestown lead you? Woke right. Do you want to be the right-wing version of Antifa? Do you want to have that same worldview built on oppression like that whiny bee that was in my YouTube comments who's like, I'm being exterminated and you don't believe it because you're a Jew? It's like, okay, tilted tables. You want to be a whiny, oppressed, woke right Antifa? Then follow J pillars. All Western nations have mass migration forced on them. And the left will say the West has colonized everybody. It's like, okay, you guys are describing the same thing. Millions of people are flooding our countries. Again, that's the right-wing nationalist, we are oppressed paradigm. We're being oppressed by the globalists. And then the people who advocate globalism are claiming oppression by nationalism, which is why you'll see woke left opposes Israel for that reason. And America, they're opposed to the
If you
West.
find the time and want some new stuff to ponder. Look into the Bigfoot phenomena.
Thank you very much for the channel support. I'm waiting for the comment to jump up on my screen. I have a screen closer to me that I can actually read. Oh, thank you very much, Mixlix. You find the time and want some new stuff to ponder, look into the Bigfoot phenomenon. Look, I just got, thanks to Wild3 in our Discord server, one of our friends from Fakeologist, he sent me a body cam for investigations when I was on my way to Seattle I guess we were kind of under the suspicion that maybe it was about to be psyoped, and I wanted to be there for it. So I was in Seattle with the body cam, and I've been using it, been taking pictures, making video, audio, recorded a raccoon the other night.
Suzetian for cat food. Does the cat have a name?
But I would 100% put some time into looking for cryptids. I would do cryptid art. Because to say, oh, I don't believe in Bigfoot because Bigfoot's tabloid trash. I don't believe in chupacabras, or it's like, well, I don't know. If I haven't investigated it, then I'm not being a skeptic. I'm being incredulous. And incredulity is lazy. It's lazy to just say, I am personally incredulous. Therefore, it's not true. It's like, sorry, but your personal take has no bearing on what is objectively real. So it would be remiss of me not to investigate and at least look into it. So I would go looking for cryptids. I would look into the basis for belief and such. So I can be an informed disbeliever. Because I'm not starting off with the premise it's real. I'd be starting off skeptical. So I either arrive at being an informed disbeliever, this is why I don't believe it, these are my reasons, or I would be someone who knows it to be real, even though me saying I know is still anecdotal, or as close to knowing as I could be. But I've heard of this thing out here. They call it, I think it's called squatching, which is a portmanteau for Sasquatch watching, and apparently it involves hanging out in the woods and watching for Bigfoot. Like, to me, it's just an excuse to get outdoors. I would probably do it. I mean, I'm probably more likely to get eaten by a mountain lion or struck by lightning, but I would take the chance. Have you seen all these stories about people in Florida getting eaten by alligators? I heard some slang out, some statement. They said if you spit out there, there's an alligator in it. And apparently, people are going into areas and these gators just come out and rip them up. It's insane. Every time I see Florida, it's crazy news, like iguanas falling out of the trees because it's cold and the people are cooking them. Thank you very much for the support, Suzette, and for the cat. Does the cat have a name? You know, the cat doesn't really have a name that I know. And I appreciate you supporting her health, her diet. Right now, I got her marinated chicken entrail and gravy. It actually looks good. No, actually, it doesn't. It's from the dollar store, but she loves it. I don't have a name, but she sleeps outside the window behind me. And every few hours, a bird hits the window. It gets dazed, and then she'll catch it. She's got a system here. It's like a trap. But if she hears me talking, she'll come from across the street. She used to stalk me. And she's getting closer and closer to the point of, I think, being semi-domestic. 33 says, but every story about Bigfoot and Dogman can't be fake, right? Well, the truth of it is everyone can be fake. Like, so from a Occam's razor perspective, Bigfoot is bears, because bears walk on two legs. And what is more likely? that people have been seeing bears doing what they do, or there's a cryptid that nobody's ever detected before with any real evidence that I know of that I'm going to look for. Well, the most likely explanation is something that already is known to exist. And the stories of Bigfoot are going to become increasingly hard to defend as we encroach more and more into areas of unknown. Because that's what we do. We project onto the unknown. I like Carl Sagan in a lot of ways, a lot of his thinking. Demon haunted world. He talks about, superstition and belief. And what's true, though, is superstition is a part of the dominant paradigm. So they might mock Bigfoot or angels or things that would be considered superstitious from their scientific standpoint, but under the guise of science, they've been introduced to a lot of superstitions. Aliens are a superstition that are now being endorsed by science. You got Richard Dawkins saying that Claude is alive, AI is alive. It's a LLM. So you see them like Tucker Carlson mainstreaming in their discourse on the far right the existence of demons. So Tucker Carlson has gone on multiple podcasts telling his story about being attacked by a demon in his sleep that left physical scratches down his back, and we haven't seen his scars. How many thousands of years of human beings have stories and legends about demons, and no one has ever shown evidence of like demons? And now here he has it. It's like a stigmata. Like where someone's palms bleed because they're believing so much in Jesus that their palms bleed. They're identifying with his wounds. So Tucker Carlson has evidence of demons, evidence that would validate every religion. It would convert people to Christianity en masse. It would shake up the scientific establishment, and it would cause atheists to reconsider. He has evidence that could be one of the biggest, wins for religion in since the Shroud of Turin. I would say the demon scarred back of Tucker Carlson is a bigger deal than the Shroud of Turin. Like I would pay to go look at Tucker Carlson's back, and if he had demon claw scratches. But he's not even going to turn. He's not even going to show us a picture of it. Show us the ER photos. Don't you want to get don't you get tested? If I got scratched in my bed by a demon, I would get tested. I guarantee it's carrying something. These things are filthy. It's from hell. You think it's like clean? So the fact that he didn't show his cuts means that he knows his audiences are a bunch of superstitious goobers. What else can you call that? Mixlick says, I'll keep an eye on your research and cryptid art if you publish your findings. I think you're going to find your mind blown. I briefly worked with Dark Matter Digital Network, and I talked to a lot of people in that arena. And it's a bit more nuanced, and you can't just say it's all fake. You have to kind of look into it, at least see what the lore is. But I did hear this individual talking about Dogman, and it sounded like either really good urban fantasy or it was real. But it was a great story regardless. What's the difference between Dogman and a werewolf? I think the Dogman is telepathic, and it's rumored to be associated with government vehicles. Basically it's some kind of thing with an ankle bracelet, like it's something that the government's involved in. I don't know. But chupacabras, goat suckers, interesting. Mothman interests me. Ant people. So I've been thinking about the Greys and the gray alien concept. And if you saw the Greys or the gray aliens, prior to Roswell, if you saw them before they were popularized, like how would you interpret it? Because you do have myths of ant people from underground. And I was talking to someone yesterday, supposedly, somebody who knows somebody involved in some kind of construction in Los Alamos that involved an elevator 27 stories underground. And, I'm like, okay, because it's not fantasy when we talk about underground infrastructure. And I've suggested before that maybe the huge budget NASA gets has to be going somewhere. I mean, they're making these B, science fiction movies for the public, Apollo 11, ISS, Space Shuttle, Artemis. That's low budget science fiction. So what are they doing with the billions? Where is all that money going? Deep space. Not satellites, the rings of Saturn, but like deep space. Underground civilization. That's probably not a conspiracy. And if things go wrong on Earth, what's more likely? You're going to sell all the rich on the idea of getting on a rocket and flying to Mars and having to start all over in some space gulag? No. You sell the rich on underground bunkers, underground infrastructure, the best in live entertainment, luxury living beneath the surface while the rest of us have to face whatever it is that's meant to clean the slate, whether it's a flood, a mud flood, nukes, civil war, starvation, fallout. Tracy Downing says Alex Jones looks much older than the age he claims to be. I think it's highly likely he's Bill Hicks. Honestly, that's the one thing that has me still stuck on Bill Hicks, because the everything else is somewhat subjective, but the narrative structure is there. But the age thing, because I was looking at Alex Jones, and he's in his 50s supposedly. He might even be like 50 or 51. And I compare him to people I know in that age range, and he looks more like 60s. Because I go to the gym, and I often see individuals in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and there's a big difference between somebody who's like 49 and someone who's 65. And Bill Hicks would be like, in his 60s, and Jones looks more like that age range. But you could just say it's just all the drinking and the drugs and the uh, what is it? I don't know what his whole life is, but the alcohol would probably explain it. Suzette Ann says dogmen retain their dog humanoid shape. Werewolves are shapeshifters. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. 33 says it's an insult to Bill Hicks. Well, if you listen to their delivery, look, there was a very good podcast by Bill. It was Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck had brought up a collection of Alex Jones clips, audio clips, and a collection of Bill Hicks clips, and they overlapped greatly. Now, it could be something else, regional dialect. They're from the same area, Austin. There could be a lot of reasons why. But it's very suspicious. That's why the whole story doesn't go away. But if your main hangup here is the age difference, I would look at Alex Jones's age and ask. I think it's a valid question. Although some say that he's been replaced and updated. Jake the Awake Hole says so, based on looks. And honestly, he lost a lot of weight. It's very consistent. There was no continuity break. He's always been on screen, so his evolution has been slow. And then you're judging someone's appearance that has been altered over years. So yeah, he doesn't look like the chubby, portly Alex Jones from 2012. But I thought he was just trying to look like a commando, like he's fighting the New World Order. So the beard and the shaved head tough guy look was just something he affected, for image reasons. But nothing else about it really seems incongruent with the original. Now, the thing is too, he's such a character that he's not hard to imitate, and he has a lot of good imitators. But I'm still not on team Alex Jones is replaced. Now, Owen Shoyer has not been replaced, unfortunately. That's the guy. Why he did it? Look, I don't know. I mean, he's probably raking in the clicks right now. By the way, if you go to my channel, go to Real Tim Osman and go through my feed. I retweet things that should be of interest to you. I uploaded some recent infographics, the Metascript decoding the twin timelines, the mind's gatekeeper, how media primes our reality. And these are derived from live stream transcripts. The red car frequency illusion, hijacking the subconscious. The biological hijack, how predictive programming hijacks your reticular activating system. Coordinated time releases to prime the filter and the influence operation itself, like citizen vigilante. And then decoding 70 years of history bending. History bending is a term that we introduced to this arena. Outside of Realville, they don't know about history bending. They believe that history is non-trustworthy, it's been altered, it's been retconned, it's been suppressed, but they don't see that it's not being retroactively interfered with, but that it's being proactively manufactured. That's a major distinction here, that our future has been written 30, 40, 50 years in advance, maybe 1,000. It's hard to say. How much control do you think they have? I mean, they have total creative control over the worldview, the internalized Truman Show of 8 billion people. They crate trained 8 billion people last year. I mean, in 2020, last major PSYOP. They plugged us all into what is, for all intents and purposes, a religion. Our de facto church is mainstream mediation. They've given us mythologies, superstitions. They've given us an entire and complete world view built on the structure of what came before. So this metascript concept in history bending didn't just start with the advent of modern media, but it's an iteration of what came before, because religions have been faking events and martyrs and histories for a long time. "33 says, Tim, do you think the Venezuela earthquakes were natural?" I was talking to fakeologists about this because it's an important question. This is a fakeability question. Because you can fake anything. If you can fake it in the movies, you can fake it on the news. The question is, can you fake it on the world stage? Can you fake it at scale? And that's where we run into questions of, well, what would it require? Controlled demolitions combined with actual simulations, mass casualty simulations, drills. Use drills to create the content to be superimposed over scenes where there are controlled demos. Crisis actors everywhere. Media reinforcement. I would say, yeah, I don't think it's outside the realm of fakeability. I mean, if you can fake terrorists taking down buildings by dressing up a controlled demolition with video composite editing, a bunch of drills, a bunch of pyrotechnics, theatrics, a manufactured spectacle with full media collusion, then why couldn't you fake an earthquake? What is the difference? And most of it's spread through hearsay, secondhand accounts, crisis actors, and then you also have to consider the misinformation effect. Because when people recall things, their memory is tainted by what they're presently experiencing, by the present environments, by the context in which it's recalled. And the media is constantly filling our minds with scenarios, doomsday scenarios. Why do you think they flood us with doomsday, dystopia, end of the world stuff? It's programming. It's that simple. They fill your mind with scenarios that get processed in the same place where you process memories. And when you recall something or you imagine something, you have built-in associations they gave you. And that alone will make these things more plausible and believable. And the instant you believe it without knowledge, but you just believe it on faith, you've tapped into the area of reaction, of emotion, a lack of skepticism. So the idea they could fake something like that is going to be unthinkable to the people who saw the news headlines and said, oh, those poor people. All those people died. Send my prayers. Okay, well, you're already taking part in the spell at that point. So am I saying they're all fake? Are you saying they're all real? If somebody says, oh, you're saying they're all fake, all earthquakes are fake, what they're asserting is that you should be on the same sheet as them, that they're all real. And we shouldn't be thinking in generalities. No, we're saying some events are fake. Fake events are built upon real things. They're simulating real things. So we're not saying all are fake, but we're asking, Could they strategically fake earthquakes convincingly? How hard would that be? And I'm saying it probably wouldn't be that hard. You would have to pre-record a lot of stuff. And with generative AI, we're at the point where you can't just assume because you saw a video of a guy running down the stairs while the building was falling apart, you can't just assume, oh, it's just a normal thing. I'm running for my life, dashing down the stairs, the building is shaking. Let me get out my stick cam, turn on my camera, and record as everything falls apart around me. Like, I don't know how, if I'm too skeptical, but I'm saying if you were going to fake something, you would create POV footage that's super dramatic, that's clippable, and the clip farms will go spread it. And nobody's going to question it. I see people clipping footage of falling buildings, and they're saying 100,000 people died. And you have people reacting. That's mass death. It's horrible. It's praise, sad, etc. Climate change. Trump did it. Harp did it. Bill Gates did it. You have all these people talking about this mass atrocity, 100,000 people killed. Was it natural? Was it not? Then you find out, well, no, 30 people were killed. Hundreds were injured. It's still bad, but the stuff that's going into people's feeds is 100,000, which is shocking. And it may not fool everybody, but a good number of people are running with that, which turns it into something emotional. Like if I thought 100,000 people died, I wouldn't be flippant about saying it could be faked. Not that I'm being flippant, I'm being skeptical. But, to deny something on that scale without some kind of reasoning would come off as flippant and uncaring. But you have to be irreverent, not of real victims, but you have to be irreverent towards the meta scripture. It's not my religion. Media is not my religion, so I don't have to respect your beliefs in it. It's your religion. If you think it's an objective set of reporters providing facts for you and there's no distortion or lies, you would be mistaken. The primary objective of mass media today is not to inform, but to conform you. To what? To the prefabricated history that they're performing for you on the theater of Shoyer. And what they perform, what you believe, becomes part of our collective history. So that's what I describe here. The twin timelines, real and fiction, the mechanics of the staged event, the 70 years of news bending and how that should alter your perspective of what we're experiencing right now. Let's see here. Murdered French teen Louis is now going to be the cause of a major protest on Sunday, July 5th. Thousands are expected to attend. Is that France? Where's that? More martyrs for the summer. Missing scientist worked on a teleportation device at a UFO-linked lab before vanishing. Clues reveal. Is that a joke? The guy invents teleportation and then he disappears. Are they saying he teleported somewhere? Mixlick says, are we at the end times like the Bible hints at, or are we just destroying ourselves with pollution, wars, anti-life politics, pure stupidity? 20 years from now, I can't see humans flourishing. In Discord this morning, I was talking to a couple people about this, and they were talking about, dating and marriage and stuff. And I was like, in 20 years, robots are going to make that kind of thing irrelevant. Robots are going to perform all the basic functionalities, not just doing the dishes. And human companionship will no longer be a need. I think it'll just be like an option because robot companionship is coming. I mean, think about the speed at which our technologies develop, our appliances. Look at your smartphone. Look at AI, super intelligence. It's not hard to put it together. And I'm not surprised by this. There was a book that came out, I think it was like 1994 or something. It was by the Satanists. It was Satan Speaks. And one of the things they said is that in the future, artificial human companionship would become a thing, that we're going to be phased out. That he said it'd be better to be useful than useless, that there's not going to be a use for a lot of people. He said not only are robots going to replace human companionship, but that the excess populations are going to be convinced to migrate. Space migration. He said that the excess populations are going to the moon. Now, this is prophecy from somebody who may or may not be in the know, but given the role of Satanism, the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set in psyops and mind war, you can't just discount it. So I'm not saying that, oh, they're going to send billions of people to the moon. No, they're going to simulate it. It'll be maybe the underground. We talk about deep space. Maybe they're not just building luxury compounds and bunkers for the elite. Maybe they built the moon, like the moon base. Because when you go to the moon, there's no atmosphere. So you're going to live underground. You're going to live in a deep underground base on the moon. They can't even terraform it. I don't know if it has the gravity to sustain an atmosphere. So in other words, colonizing the moon means you're living in a crater. That's so easy to fake. You'll be living somewhere, beneath Phoenix, Arizona, or you'll be living beneath Denver. You'll be living somewhere underground thinking you're on a moon base. That reminds me of H.G. Wells, the Time Machine, where the elite live on the surface, the Eloys, and the rest of the people live underground, the Morlocks. And now you have this division into separate species. And the ones underground become creatures. The Morlocks become like, hairy, pale, albino with glowing eyes, these creatures. I think they're going to turn humanity into a bunch of Morlocks. They're using the space con to condition people to the space gulag life, space communism. And if you look at the original thinkers on space migration, Russian rocket pioneers, they believed in cosmism, panpsychism, and they were the ones talking about perfecting communism on Mars and exporting it back to Earth. I think the book in 1906 was called Red Star. But that's the plan. Space communes. Well, space communes could be faked underground. But are we in the end times? No. The show will go on forever. There is no end. The end times scenarios are used to restrict your frame of reference to a shorter time frame so they can control you. It's also done to demoralize you, to make you subservient to the leadership, dependent on them for your sense of safety and for your survival. So end time scenarios, doomsdays, have always been fake. And what they've done with climate change is they reintroduced eschatology because it's good for mind control. They introduced the atom bomb. The atom bomb to me is just a construct. Why? It's a construct to put rational people who aren't religious kooks into the end times. So even if you don't believe in the Bible, guess what? You are an end timer. If you are a believer in mainstream science, you must therefore accept we are in the end times, or that the world could end at any moment because of the weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, the 1984 horror sci-fi Chud, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. These monsters are homeless people mutated by illegally dumped radioactive waste into the New York sewers. They didn't become Ninja Turtles. So Chud has evolved, and in left-leaning communities, it became a derogatory slur for basement dwellers. Okay, now I get it. That's why they call us chuds, or the left calls right chuds or basement dwellers chuds, because we are cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. That is funny. So Chud the Builder, who's in jail right now, took that name knowing what it meant because, the left calls him a chud. It's an anti-right concept to take that. That's interesting. So the Chad thing, I was looking at that Chad Jesus meme. I'll put it up on the screen for you. The looks maxed Jesus of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, look at that. From a propaganda standpoint, what is this trying to tell us? If you're looking at the screen, you're looking at Jesus with his Jehovah's Witness haircut. The Watchtower sent a barber. That's one version of it. I mean, there's actually a better picture of it from the side. You got to see here. Like you could use this on a shampoo commercial, like a shampoo label. Like his hair is perfectly combed. I don't know if it's hairspray or gel. And look at that beard. He's got to be using an electric. That's the Jehovah's Witness Jesus they tried to sell to me a few days ago. This is it. And have you covered the Empire State Building climbers? Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a psyop attached to it. You have these two daredevils with these black, like ninja costumes with horns. I thought it was Batman and Batgirl, but no, it's two devils. And they climbed the Empire State Building, and they put up a sign when the love for peace outweighs the love for war, we'll have world peace, or something trite, something hallmarky. But they climb to the top, and then he proposes to her. So I'm not quite sure. Is there significance to it? But it's a mainstream trending story, so it's worth looking into. Wasn't there another Spider-Man? We were talking about Spider-Man stories. There was some guy who was known for doing acrobatics on the inside of a volcano, and he fell in. Duet Celeste says election fraud mailed in votes from the moon. Well, the guy who directed Independence Day, speaking of like alien invasions, he directed Moonfall. And in Moonfall, it turns out that the moon is an artificial construction sent here by an extraterrestrial species from across the galaxy. That basically it's an ark. You can live in it, and it contains advanced technology for us to access. But it was taken over by an evil AI who decides to crash it into the earth. So Moonfall is about how the moon's about to fall on us. But luckily there's a scientist, played by an actor who happens to be 33 at the time, who sacrifices himself to save the world from the falling moon. 33 says the state building was fake. You can tell from the background. I don't know if it was fake. Is it fakeable? Yes. But they are very well established daredevils who've climbed a lot of structures. So why would this one be fake? They have a past history of doing these things for real. So I don't know. Plain Dakota says that Jesus looks like Dan Blisserian. Dan Blisserian. Oh yeah, he's the guy who was trying to get Nick Fuentes to engage in a conversation about killing, who was it? They were talking about assassinating various political leaders and influencers. The guy's a total Fed, according to Nick Fuentes. Excuse me, it's a Freudian slip. I mean, really, they probably are. They are probably both Feds, to be honest. 33 says, "Cool story, bro." Well, look, low information incredulity doesn't weigh anything here. You're incredulous, not skeptical. They're like, "Oh, that was fake." Oh, you're incredulous. It was fake. You're incredulous that it could have happened. So you're saying it's fake. You're personally incredulous. That's not skeptical. Cool story, bro. Sarcasm doesn't work. I mean, I'm saying, what is your evidence that it's fake? If you can't discredit every single daredevil climb they did, are you saying daredevil climbers don't exist? Do rock climbers exist? Like, what are you saying is fake? Do they exist? Are they AI? If you're just going to say that event was fake with a hand wave, that's personal incredulity, and it has no currency here. I mean, like me saying, oh, Bigfoot just doesn't exist, it's fake. Well, that's lazy. I have reasons for not believing in it, but if I'm going to make a unequivocal statement and say, I know it's fake, I don't actually know that. I know people believe it. I know people believe it's fake, but do I have any direct knowledge of it? No. Ollie Bongo says they gave Chad Jesus hunter eyes, very looks maxed. Oh, let me zoom in. You know what? He looks like he's been taking his carpenter's hammer to those cheekbones. Probably using some products to improve his hairline and his eyebrows. What's that stuff they put in their eyebrows? Castor oil. I've been and the looks maxers. Oh, he's been mewing, where they half swallow their tongue and they suck in their chin fat, and they say that it builds their jawlines. Manuel E says, I don't think it was faked, but they are actors. They were in a Netflix movie. Yeah, look, it could have been essentially a PR stunt more than an actual, like, unapproved thing. Manuel E says, Jesus on peptides for sure. Yeah, I see that. It's clever, isn't it? I've always loved Jehovah's Witness literature. I've made it a point because I used to go to this laundromat and there would always be their stuff. It comes off as tabloid, as sensationalistic, dire. Like one of them I had was I have a collection of cult literature, and one of them was Satan holding a globe, like very dramatic. But their whole sales pitch only works if you're a pessimist and you think the world's going to hell in a handbasket. But I'm an optimist. This is hell. It doesn't get any more hellish. Like, this is the bottom. We've hit rock bottom, and it only goes up from here. Like, and we came down here, or we exist here because of what this is. I don't feel any obligation to save the world or condemn it. I actually accept it. I'm very stoic about it. Space Chimp says, Jurassic with a trimmed beard. 33 says, you got to prove it happened. I don't. So he's saying the burden of proof is on me for proving that they climbed the Empire State Building. Now, my reference is their social media, not just that news report. So what you're asserting, though, is that it's fakeable. So you're saying you think it's fakeable that a couple could climb a popular landmark in broad daylight, put a flag up, and then be seen getting arrested at the bottom after having a long social media footprint going back many years. You're saying that could have been faked. So how did they fake the flag? How did they fake it for the observers on the ground? So that would be, I think you have to prove that it's fakeable first. Prove that it's fakeable. If it was some random, mountaintop or something like that, maybe, but you're talking about a public spectacle. They made a public spectacle. So when there's a public spectacle, the question of fakeability becomes a little more complicated. 9/11 was early in the morning. They used obfuscating fog. They had dozens of drills going on to clear the area. But this one doesn't have any sort of barriers. So I would say the burden of proof to prove it's real is on you. Well, I see what you mean. Like, I shouldn't just trust the news, but I'm saying I didn't. I looked at peripheral information, and they had previously done many similar events. So, like, I don't dispute that they exist. So are you saying they exist? And look, what you're engaging is personal incredulity and also an appeal to or argument from ignorance. Because if you can't cite the evidence or examine the evidence that I brought up and contradict it, then you're arguing from ignorance. So until you've looked at their social media, you're in no position to call it fake. You have to go there first before you can try to shift the burden of proof to me. I'm not a media advocate here, but I'm very well aware of the trap of, oh, everything's fake, and then getting labeled as, oh, these people call everything fake. No, we don't. No, we don't. Personal incredulity is no currency here. You got to be a skeptic, an informed disbeliever, or show us your receipts. Show us your work. You might have cheated on the test. You can arrive at the right answer without the right reasons, and that's not good enough. You have to arrive at the right answer for the right reasons, and we have to be able to check your work. The reason for the Great Deconstruction Project, which is ongoing, and I'm going to put what I have so far into the Teachable course, and it'll be free because I want comments on it. The reason why we're doing this great deconstruction is so that we are the most informed people about what we're talking about. And we know 33NBB is just being a troll. I'm not saying social media is proof. That's one of the dumbest things. But you haven't even looked at it. You haven't even looked at it and you're saying it's fake. If you can say something's fake without looking at it, like, oh, everything on social media is not real. I have a social media account. Is that not real? Is everything on media fake? That's exactly the type of attitude we don't need because that's not how we operate here. So I'm sorry to put you on timeout, but you're just trolling me at this point, misrepresenting what I'm saying, as though I don't know what I'm talking about here when I say fakeability. I coined that term specifically for this reason because there are people say that, oh, gorillas are fake. Well, gorillas are fakeable. You can buy a gorilla costume. Doesn't mean that it's fakeable at scale in every zoo. How did you fool all the biologists? How do you fool the guy that cleans the cage? Like, you can't say gorillas are fakeable at scale. So I'm asking, is it possible to do a public PR stunt, daredevil stunt, spectacle in front of an audience and fake it? I don't know. I mean, how would you make that fake? I mean, we're talking about a public event. A public event on top of the most popular monument in New York, people watching, news covering it, witnesses everywhere in the middle of the day, and you're mocking me for saying that it's probably not fake. And you're coming at me from a point of total incredulity and a total rejection of all the peripheral information I'm citing about this couple who have a well-established reputation for climbing buildings. Auto disbelief is bullshit. Low information disbelief is bullshit. Reflexive personal incredulity as a reason for rejecting something is bullshit. Blanket generalizations about, oh, all social media is fake, that's bullshit. We don't traffic in that here. Anyway, we're going to continue this conversation in Discord and elsewhere. Appreciate all of your support. And if you haven't gone to infiniteplainsociety.com, go there and take the course Charlie Kirk is Alive for free. And if you want a refresher or if you're new, I do recommend the other course called Intro to Metascript. And this will be followed up by more. Every month I'm releasing a single course on theory, and then I'll be doing 3 or 4 on practice. Ted Stryker says, sounds like 9/11. It actually doesn't. They didn't use concealment fog in this event. Like, so what I'm saying is that's apples and oranges. We're not talking, like, how would you actually, just as a matter of practice, how would you put two people on, how would you have two people climb a building in front of an audience, get on the roof of that building, put up a flag, be covered by news coppers, people on the ground? How would you do this in front of an audience for fake? You know, how would you do it? How would you fake it? Are they holograms? Again, there's a significant distinction between incredulity and skepticism. Seems like it might be, yeah, it's a Netflix documentary. But again, the people who say everything's CGI, I was frustrated with them before, not this person, but others before who were saying, oh, Jeffrey Epstein never existed. Ghislaine Maxwell, they were just CGI. And they put what? They put a CGI Epstein into videos with Donald Trump awkwardly dancing? I mean, what are you talking about? And so when I say Charlie Kirk doesn't exist, I'm saying no, he doesn't. I mean, he exists as a fictional character, but I'm not saying he's CGI. No, there's a living, breathing person there, but he's playing a role. That's a big difference between saying he doesn't exist at all. Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't exist at all. The people who say that, they're like, oh, there was no such thing as a John Benet Ramsey and Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you mean, no such thing? There's plenty to substantiate that they existed. We're asking, are the narratives around these people based on fictions? Are they actors? You don't watch a movie saying, oh, Brad Pitt doesn't exist. Well, no, he does exist. He's playing these roles. It's just this confusion that I'm seeing here. It's unwarranted confusion, and it's unnecessary to make these incoherent, confusing statements. Like if you say it was all CGI, you're going to say that, you're going to stand on it, bring some evidence. You can't just stand on it with this false alleged certainty, this confidence. Oh, I can confidently say that didn't happen. No, you can't. There are some things you just can't legitimately assert. Like if somebody said, the sky is actually pink, you guys. We know it's not. We know how light works. People say, oh, the sun used to be yellow. No, it never was. Uh, but can you actually claim to believe that? Well, you might be able to legitimately claim to believe the sun was yellow, I suppose. Some people will say that. But if somebody says they believe the sky is pink, you would say, well, that is not a good faith statement. You can't honestly believe that. So you can't honestly say it's fake if your evidence is just, I don't believe it because it's on TV. You have to have reasons, and I'm a reasonable person. I don't mean to get annoyed by the unreasonable propositions of auto disbelievers, but that's the kind of stuff we're trying to separate from. We're trying to separate from the lack of nuance, from generalizations, and from sloppy rationalizations instead of reason. Because we have to provide receipts. The Great Deconstruction Project is a collection of receipts looking at 70 plus years of systemic fakery. And we're not going to pollute our methodology and our assessments with sloppy, offhanded, knee jerk dismissals of anything that we see on TV. Don't want to be confused with the straw man they've constructed.